Okay, we are recording the executive session. Time is 10:20 a.m.
Okay. Yes, I, President Xochitl Gaitana, the DPS Board of Education, representing District 2. The board will now move into executive session for purposes of a discussion regarding matters required to be kept confidential by federal or state law or rules and regulations as a result of the incident that occurred March 22, 2023, as authorized by CRS 24-6-4024C. Discussions of specialized details of security arrangements or investigations as a result of the incident that occurred March 22, 2023, as authorized by CRS 24-6-4024D, and discussion of individual students where public disclosure would adversely affect that person or persons involved as a result of the incident that occurred March 22, 2023, due to incidences that happened at our schools as authorized by CRS 24-6-4024H. Would everyone please go around and just state your name and what district you represent?
Ayante Anderson at large. Scott Esserman at large.
Carrie Olson, District 3.
Charmaine Lindsay, District 5.
Michelle Quattlebaum, District 4.
Alex Morero, Superintendent.
Aaron Thompson, General Counsel.
Claudia, Keith Price, Mindful Therapy.
Thank you. Go ahead, Attorney Thompson.
Wait.
And Scott Balderman, District 1.
Okay, so the purpose of the session is to discuss the incident, security arrangements, student involved. Who wants to kick it off?
Well, I know that we want to get a quick overview for Superintendent Marrero. We are going to go into more details around the security, the DPS security update. But let's start there because we want to bring other staff in that will not be a part of this particular conversation with Dr. Marrero. So why don't we give them the floor for a little bit and then we can move into the rest of it.
Sure, thank you. I know there's a desire from the board to speak. From what I understand is the memo that I sent to you all. It's not been noticed, I should say. So we are not supposed to discuss, but if it's important to all, I'm willing to start the conversation there. But I would like to limit it because that is not what's important for the district. I want to reiterate that it is not what's important in terms of what you all felt, all the respect, or how it got out. It's not, but we can start there if you want.
Wait, what?
Want to be mindful that because it's not noticed, that in the context that we can discuss
For Balderman.
oh, sorry. Let me see if I can turn up.
I can elaborate. I was informed that there is a deep desire by the board to speak about my memo that I sent to the board. That's not the case, that we can move on to the regular chapter.
And the impact of it. So there's certain things we can and cannot discuss, but if we focus on the impact of it, and with Attorney Thompson's guidance, he will stop us if it's something that we shouldn't be discussing.
So, go ahead.
So I will say that, for me, hold on, we should wait until we get Director Balderman involved.
Are you? Yeah, before you say that, I'm gonna speak, if that's okay.
Scott, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. My computer's turned all the way up on the speakers. I was trying to see if I had any headphones I could plug in, but I don't have anything. I'll just get real close and listen. Might just have to look at my ear.
Okay.
And we'll speak up.
Okay.
So the concern that I personally have in diving into this particular conversation is if we're going to have an authentic conversation about that, it needs to be just that. It should not be tempered with, you can talk about this, but you can't talk about that. Because then we're not talking, it may create a situation where we're not able to address the issue at hand.
So I want to add to
And
your point.
so that's what I'm putting out there for my colleagues and Dr. Monero to consider. The governing body that does have human resource accountability to Dr. Monero. It is my opinion. I don't want to say dereliction of duty, but it is misguided for us to not offer authentic and critical feedback to an employee that will help them grow. And it as an individual, as well as the person embodying, in this case, the role of superintendent. Having the employee, for me, is not just about creating executive limitations. He's our employee, they're human.
I think we
I'm
need
not
to,
getting into it. I'm just saying, this is why we're talking about the discussion. I haven't said anything outside. Why I believe this is not the time to have the discussion if it is going to be limited. As Attorney Thompson just pointed out, it will be into the HR stuff. We'll have to get into the HR stuff. And if we can't do that in this setting, now it's not the time to have a conversation.
So here, let me add to that point, to your point, for the same exact reasons. I also recommend that this resolution being around, which by the way, I was the last one to find out about at 8:30 last night, FYI, to all of you. That we also not discuss that until we've had this HR conversation. That's very frustrating. Just FYI.
So I think
But I think there's an
we should,
idea we talked
we
about.
should separate the two real quick. The conversation around personnel, is definitely warranted, and I believe that we need to, when we return back to our regular meeting, because we can't discuss it in here, we need to come to a consensus when this board can convene as soon as possible. If that means we can, but we have to post it within 24 hours. So we're talking about potentially tomorrow afternoon of us coming back together as a board. There is no way next week for us to convene with 5 of us being in Orlando for parts of the week, spring break already starting, and district employees already have planned vacations. But this conversation cannot wait. And also other issues of the board still need to be taken a vote on. So there is a potential that we need to have the discussion when we return to public session about posting a special meeting of the Board of Education under GP5. The president has the authority to do so. And for you all to take the time to figure out if it is at 1 p.m. or if it's at another time tomorrow afternoon for this board to convene again, to 1, have the executive session on personnel matters, and 2, have resume the voting that we were supposed to do today, because that is holding up the work of the district for other areas for the Denver Public Schools. So that's something that we cannot discuss here, but we can discuss it in the comeback session when the board will convene again to have the actual no holds barred conversation. So that's that. With the resolution of I think that can be discussed in depth because it's a part of the topic, right?
yeah, the security arrangements, that is a proper.
So I would suggest we should probably hear from we should definitely go through all of the safety updates and what we know, all the information to get, because that's what we're here for, is to have the emergency meeting and an update about all of the stuff that took place yesterday. I think we need to have that conversation. And then towards the end, that's when we need to bring, what is the board's action out of this? Are we walking out of this with whatever with the resolution? Are we walking out of this with that conversation, or are we doing something different? But we need to have an action item for that when we approach the press. Every press agency in the state and around the country will be here today. So when we approach the press, we have a unified message about what folks should expect moving forward as it relates to safety in Denver Public Schools. So I would suggest that we bring in all the safety professionals, the team, everybody, because we can't have the conversation that some want to have because of parameters. We should probably bring in everybody now, have the conversation about what we know, and then take the rest of the time to what is the message after this before we approach and all walk in front or roll in front of a camera in the next hour or 2 hours.
First, I'm hearing of a resolution. So I have concerns about it. Tremendous concerns as a violation of policy governance. So I guess we'll get to it if we do. In terms of the not holding up the business of the district, I respectfully disagree. We know exactly what we're doing, so let me start with the synopsis of what's happening. And forgive me in advance about coming off assertive. I have to. There's a lot of students, families, staff that are looking for that. So what happened was the student that we received from was not Aurora, was Cherry Creek, transferred over in January as a behavioral plan. It's hard to gather because DPS is the school district that really prides itself in schools of the age of change. It's more of a district of schools instead of a school district, meaning we're not centralized on how we capture behavior plans. It's one of the many issues. So finally, confirmed that we do have one student in that plan has a history of violence.
So he can listen and.
We did other conference phone.
Actually, they're gonna call you in on the conference call. No, hang on, Eric's been for there. He's gonna do that. I saw that you couldn't hear, so he's gonna put you on the, why don't I leave you on my phone until he gets that? I don't know.
Well, you missed all of that? All right, so yesterday a student was who came our student in January of being violent to others is on the behavior plan. Was at ease since January. In that plan, he was supposed to be searched. The person who did the search was Assistant Principal Anderson. Clearly, they had a relationship. But yesterday, Anderson was unavailable to do the search, so two things did it in his stead. And the student was carrying, reacted, shot him, and way up to our daily area. Release did recognize release. There's no school at least today. Already announced the business. I'm letting you all know formally now. Yes, it's entirety charters tomorrow for mental health supports and beyond, and not to mention that we had thousands of fallouts and threats of walkouts and 2,000 teachers alone.
Hey, Scott, we're gonna go ahead and hang up and I'll call you on this line.
In terms of what I've done since then, two board members were present at least with me, explaining at least why this has, as you all know, repeated offenses. It's not alone, but it's high profile.
Yeah.
We're going to call you back.
Okay, so
Are we gonna have your DPS security person come in so we can ask detailed questions or?
yeah,
Okay.
but just want to get to what in terms of not holding up the functions of the condition. So two of you were present. I know that's not the majority of the board. I did share what I was going to do. I did get acknowledgement. I acknowledged that that's not board action. However, it was not going to stop me. under policy governance and in any governance model, I, as a chief executive, can assert an executive order on the district. That's what I did for these. I was thrilled to know that not only I asked for one, Chief Thomas offered two who were very friendly to the East community, and from what I'm gathering, well received as individuals that can either re-engage or continue a relationship with these. When I came, well, I'm skipping over a very important part, which is my visit to the hospital, and perhaps I can share that with you all at a later date. When I got back here, we had our meetings with our union heads, our principals, and overwhelmingly, from north to south, they all said, wait a second, we have situations that happen all the time, BMOK, just because we're not east. What can you do for us? I didn't request it at that time. Got a call from Chief Thomas, who said, if you want an officer at any school, the mayor has given me the authority to have one. So at that point, I offered it to high school principals. All of them, with the exception of two, DSA and Compassion Road, weren't no's. They said they need to ask first. Wanted them. So I offered it, and I plan to assign if that's what the community needs. I understand that that may be against what you all feel. I understand likely it's a violation of EL 1010. But that's what's happening for the district. So I don't think that we should debate that, because even if you all override me, which is going to be terminal, the mayor can enact an executive order, and he will, just like he did with the vaccination mandate. So I understand that this is a very problematic conversation to have, but it's going to happen. It's beyond our control. I would hope that it can be our decision, but we are going to be tied to an executive order. At least that's what he told me yesterday evening. And
What does that entail exactly?
very similar to the vaccination mandate. If you do not comply, some sort of sanction, something to that effect.
Well, then I think the conversation is moved for the district to be having around, because our opinions don't matter. Whether we agree or disagree, our opinions truly don't matter around the reinstitution of safety officers across the district. Because you've now told us that you will override whatever the board tells you if it's not in line with with reinstating SROs. You've now given that very clearly to us, and that if you don't do it, the mayor plans to do it. So then our hands are tied. And personally, I believe that the mayor just needs to go ahead and issue an executive order, and because we are the duly elected school board of the Denver Public Schools. We are independently elected officials, and we are the ones who are enacting policy in the district. And if we together are not coming up and moving, because as it stands now, EL 1010 is in effect. No school shall be permanently staffed with an armed officer or a police officer, whatever it says. That is still in effect. So if that means the mayor can override our own policy governance, if our one employee, our superintendent, is going to tell the board that he will override the executive limitation, then the conversation here is not about if we shall allow it. It's in my opinion, the mayor needs to just go ahead and just take that control and do it, because regardless of what we do, it's not going to be, if it's not putting cops in schools, then we're going to get them anyways. So I feel like having this part of this conversation is moot, because the decision's already been made without the duly elected school board.
In terms of EL 1010, I used in my memo to you all likely, right? Because the reasonable interpretation of permanent is up for debate, right? So we are well beyond 3/4 of the year. So from here to the end of the school year, I can argue that it's not permanent, right? So that's why I use the term likely. But in terms of the memo, here's where I think that we could have a deeper conversation. And I think we need to take this conversation this way in terms of how we communicate. Right? I've already instructed my team not to engage with individual board members, not because of trust, just because what happened yesterday, I think could have been avoided in terms of individual requests, needs, and wanting to be in the know. I think we were broken in terms of how we communicate as a board. This is not my first rodeo. I had 9 members of a board before, and board leadership was critical on how we shared information to and from. And I know that has been some issues in terms of how we engage. But we were in a crisis moment. It is beyond unrealistic for me to inform every board member. One person, right? So that's one, and one response, to be quite honest, the response I was expecting from the memo was, we stand in solidarity with our superintendent as the leader of the district. To be quite honest, that was the only response that the board should have considered. Anything else, I think, got us into this place that we are now.
But we did give you that response in our statement.
No, you did not, because I was under the impression at least that I had the support. I very quickly learned that I didn't, and then at the end of the day, when you were in my office, I was told that the board is not supporting.
Actually, so, yeah, just, Secretary Qualcomm had a good question about whether or not we're out of scope. I think we are still in scope because we're talking about the district's response and the board's reaction to that response. So we are talking about the incident and.
So these are concerns that I have, some things that were brought up were your experience with previous boards and how the communication flow happened, and that you dealt with the leadership of the board disseminated the information. We all know that that'll lead us into a different conversation. So I don't think that that's a topic, unless we're allowed to actually talk about that. Because then it becomes disingenuous and we're putting something out there that we can't respond to. And that's not helpful to move us forward.
So the way I heard the
So-
statement was. I feel like he's talking about his response to the incident, how there was an expectation that the board wanted like one-on-one communications with the superintendent, why he thought that that wasn't realistic in the moment. So I still think we're sort of in this area about response.
When we say how the board should have responded,
Sure.
we're far outside that scope. Far. And we aren't going to address that here because that's not appropriate to this conversation. We are far outside that scope. We talk about the lack of communication and patterns of communication and requests for communication. We're far outside that scope. When we start to talk about the impacts of the hospital and coming back here after having been at a press conference where already it wasn't just announced about East, it was announced district-wide before anybody had gone to a hospital, we're outside the scope.
I think that's a fair.
One second, that's untrue. I didn't say anything in a press conference that said that I was placing officers there.
It did happen. I mean, you did not say it,
I did not say it.
you did not say it in those words. In the conversation that we had, when you called me, I told you, I shared with you, sitting at home as a viewer, this is what was heard. After we hung up, I changed it because I watched the press conference on Channel 9. I changed it to Channel 7. Channel 7 was reporting the superintendent just reinstated SROs. I didn't have an opportunity to speak to anyone. Changed it to Channel 4. Channel 4 reported the same thing. And at that point, I turned the TV off. And so this is where we get tricky. When I constantly talk about words matter, words have meaning. We have to choose our words carefully because of the perception, because of how people may interpret what we're saying. We have to be cautious. I did share that with you, and I apologize for that. But that's what was out there. So prior to, you were still at East, we hadn't even started dismissing students at that point. Media was already reporting that SROs were back in schools. So the alarm that board members that were not present is like, wait, what? What? We're making decisions on the fly? Did these two unilaterally make that decision?
I'm the vice
Did-
president, you didn't call me.
Wait. Did the two board members that were present make that decision? Did they make it in conjunction with the superintendent? So what we have going on here is we have miscommunication. And if I could be so bold to say, it's a failure of leadership. Our president was there. That was a failure of leadership. Our superintendent was there. That was a failure of leadership to communicate to 5 other people what was happening. You got information from me, what was happening on the outside. You were in the thick of it. You were with all of the emotions, all of the tension, all of the uncertainty, all of the, I don't know what I want, but I know I don't want this. You were dealing with all of that. You were dealing with people saying, do something, do something, do something. I get that. But at the end of the day, communication did need to happen. I thought the memo was a great way to do it. But I also believe that there could have been a different tone to that. The memo for me did not come across as let's work in partnership. It was hang the ELs, hang everything we've been working towards. This is what I'm going to do. That's how it came across. I didn't respond to it. There are key things that were missing of that communication. We did not have confidential. Board, we didn't have any of that stuff listed, which is normally listed on your communications. For a person that words matter. I pay attention to stuff or into details. I pay attention to things like that. That speaks to the tone of the memo. So it's certainly back around to the memo. But, and please don't, everything that I'm saying is on point. You may not agree with me, so
Disagree with you.
you may not agree. But I'm gonna stop.
So I think that we're getting into the memo piece I'm gonna stress that this needs to be a personnel specific conversation. Because we are getting into an area where we can't respond to certain things.
Why is there?
And that I was hoping that we weren't gonna get into it, and then you kind of went into it, and so now we're in it. But I strongly believe we need to table the conversation about the memo, because that is a personnel, that could be potential personnel issues that we as a board need to discuss. If there is a board majority, if there are 4 members that believe action needs to be taken about that, we can't have that conversation right now. We can't really go into a lot of the thick of it with this conversation right now. Regardless if we agree or disagree with the memo, we can state that tomorrow. But what we really need to do is get the facts of the situation that happened in East. We need to bring in our safety professionals, and the comment around not delaying the work of the district is that we do also have other board business that we were supposed to take care of today. At our regular scheduled board meeting. That is something that we still have to address. We can't just forego your recommendations on innovation stuff. We still have to take those matters up and vote on those things. But the memo piece, I think we're continuously going to be putting ourselves in a corner of, because if you say something like you just did, especially around the whole, I told my staff not to communicate with y'all, like we can't really respond to that because we're not having a personnel discussion. So we need to probably table this memo conversation. We can agree to disagree on it, and then move into the facts of the day. So that, because we still have in 1 hour, we are supposed to go out and face every camera in America, and we need to be united. And if we're not going to be united, then if we're not united, it's going to tell. And also there's going to start being tension between the duly elected Board of Education and the superintendent hired by the Board of Education. And that can't happen because that will disrupt the duties and the delay or the functionality of this district. If we're at adversarial roles, that's why we need to have the conversation very soon. But we also need to talk about what happened so that we have a united message when we go out before every camera in America. CNN is here, the Today Show is here, Good Morning America is here, like those folks are here and they will be here at 1 o'clock when we have this press conference. And we are the school board that every school board in America has their eyes on because we are the most recent school shooter.
And thank you for that and for getting us back on track. One thing I will say is if we're going to discuss the memo, it really needs to be in the context of response to the incident. Part of the investigation is a result of the investigation, but I agree.
But I covered all of that.
Yeah, as long as we're, and I don't want to keep raising it, but I want to give this group as much latitude as I think it's legally possible to discuss what's on the board's mind and on the superintendent's mind. But thank you again for bringing us back to the purpose of this meeting. And again, I don't want to foreclose discussion of any topic, but as long as we can ground that discussion in either response, security plan, investigation. If we're talking about it as a response, if we're talking about it as a result of investigation, I think that we're in safe ground there, but thank you. Do we want to let the
There was a
superintendent continue
point
with this
two
overview?
when you started, point two, that you mentioned when you first started and what was happening in the school. There was something that you mentioned.
Hold on, Michelle. So she is correct. Let's give an opportunity for other board members that haven't spoke to speak. But want to make sure that we're on the issue. We're not talking about amendment. We're not talking about personnel issues. So if we're going to go into personnel issues, we're not having that conversation today. We are having a conversation about the facts of the events that happened yesterday.
And that's what my question was about.
So I hear you. Let's just at least chime in some other folks real quick because it has been one-sided dominant. We'll start with Charmaine, we'll go to Dr. Olson, then we'll end with Alderman.
I don't want to talk about the memo, so I'm okay with that. I don't really care about it. The issue that I have is the SRO officers themselves. We have unarmed people patting down students that are probably armed, were armed, and shot them. And what are they supposed to do if they find somebody with a gun? When there's nobody at the school to ever offer any kind of support or any kind of a backup to the student that is carrying a gun, and they know that none of these people that are searching them are armed. And to not talk about the SRO issues when we're talking about mass shootings, that's one thing. Yeah, they don't work. But when you're talking about students with handguns, which my grandson and granddaughter who go to East say there's at least 100 in the school every single day, they can name at least 20 kids they know that have guns, including the kid that was arrested that was a friend of theirs just a couple weeks ago. So when you're talking about handguns and you're talking about kids that are volatile people that make bad decisions, having a loaded gun in a classroom, when we're walking through a metal detector to get in this building every day, and to say that there's no deterrent from any kind of law enforcement, and what that whole discussion about mass shooting that people keep arguing with me and showing me statistics on doesn't say is how many instances where some kid is being bullied or threatened by another kid, or somebody has a gun and they go tell an SRO officer because they trust this person, hey, this kid has a gun and they're threatening this other kid. And so this other kid's talking about bringing a gun, get stopped or get halted because those conversations and that SRO officer has the trust of the students in the schools. And since I've dealt with minority kids who are likely to carry guns, who've been in and out of gangs, who are in and out of criminal justice, and these are the kids that will bring a gun to school and might shoot somebody. I know these kids. And these kids they should have the police officers there to stop them from doing this to themselves, to stop them from shooting people. And so I'm in favor of bringing the SROs back, and it has nothing to do with mass shootings. It has nothing to do with somebody with an AR-15 that's going to go gun a bunch of people down. It has to do with having a presence in the school that has a deterrent factor, especially against bullying, which nobody wants to talk about because the bullying issue is huge. When you go talk to the people at North High School and they start talking about kids being bullied now without the SROs versus before, they're saying it's a 10-fold increase, especially against disabled kids getting bullied. And the SROs stop that. And I also feel, and this is just my opinion, so I'm obviously on the minority here, that when you bring the SROs back into the schools, it should be up to the schools, should be up to the parents, should be up to the administration. Why are we trying to tell these people? I mean, not every school has to have one, But why are we trying to tell these people and dictate to them the terms of what they need to do for their schools to feel safe? Why not let the parents, why not let the community? We've been talking about letting the community take over on all of these other issues. Why not let the community who's calling out to have these SROs brought back in the schools to be the ones that make these decisions?
I
So,
jump in.
I want to make sure that we.
I just want to acknowledge something. 2 seconds.
Okay.
I say no. That's where I am. I say we stick to the plan and we hear from all the board members and then we hear from you.
Can you take notes, Dr. Madero, and then you can acknowledge
No problem.
as one member speak?
Um,
Do you need time, Dr. Olson?
No, I'm good. I'm, what I'd like to get out of today is I really want to know how the two deans are. I think that's probably coming.
Excuse me, I'm interrupting. For the first 2 times I heard about the students, I hear about the staff. Don't you think it's a problem, Board of Education, who you're also prepared to hold me accountable? Who holds you all accountable? No one has asked about our students. No one has asked about my staff. Thank you, you two. Thank you, I'm sorry.
That was gonna be my next question, because I.
I'm gonna suggest that we pause.
yeah, we.
I'm
Yeah, we
sorry.
need to pause.
That was again out of line. We need to pause.
We gotta keep going.
Time is 10:56. The board is gonna take a
4-minute recess.
4-minute recess. All right. Executive sessions back on the record at 11:03 a.m.
We'll hear from Directors Olson and then Balderman. We'll open it up to see if there's any more school board members that would like to add commentary about the facts of yesterday. And then we will move into a response from the superintendent and move into crafting whatever the joint response will look like for the 1 p.m. press conference when the Board of Education returns. Again, we will have the personnel conversation. We will have other conversations about other things in a time where it is legally permissible without bounds for us to be able to have that conversation. And we will discuss that when we return, when the Board of Education can meet again to discuss the other things, meaning votes that we need to take around the previous scheduled board meeting. And also if the board would like to have another conversation in executive session about personnel discussion. So that'll be a different conversation when we return to the open setting and we can set that date. But now we'll go to Director Olson, Director Balderman, and then we'll go back around real quick to other board members, and then we'll have a response from the superintendent, and then we'll bring in other experts. Director Olson.
Started doing some thoughts and. Yeah, I was interested in knowing which sounds like pretty sure that what the comms plan is at East for the families and the students, because as all of you know, I was to meet with SDA yesterday. It was the second meeting with them, and that was one of you were on the email chain. Was state knowledge, staff statement, and Principal Walker. The students wanted to know what's the comms plan with emergency. Just saying, well, yeah. Right, and like the stuff, I have some friends who are teachers who have been teaching. Just it's been interesting. Okay, so it's not a huge sample population, it's just 5. But they all say that this is a challenging situation. There are no easy. So that's been their message to me. They're all veteran teachers who have taught in other schools, have been around the district for a while, but they are also interested in the reading for what's the common plan like when something like this. How are you going to provide mental health supports for us? I think that's something I've heard Director Potabom repeatedly say. And that's something we're consistently hearing from the students, for student, staff, and families. I will say, while I agree with the no classes, the thing that I worry about from a teacher's point of view is school is often a safe place for students. So how are we providing mental health supports in the schools, not making students go out somewhere to search for this, but can we get something at East? Maybe this is part of it, but I don't know if this is their stream of consciousness. How can we help get mental health supports in a place that students are familiar with and they feel safe? Maybe they don't feel safe. That's one of the things. So I also would like to have us clear up some of the remarks Chief Thomas made yesterday. I shared this with Director Potabom. He said that it was the board's decision to have staff pat down the students who were not armed officers. And if we could help Chief Thomas get on board for how decisions were made around that, I don't know, that's part of the conversation what we need to do. There's evidence by some of our emails today. I don't know if you've gotten the same ones I have. It says, one pointedly said, Carrie Olson, you are responsible for this happening because you made the decision to put those officers or those two administrators in harm's way. I heard it on TV. So I'm just saying that out. I think
Was supposed to, didn't get the opportunity to do so. Wanted to, Board of Education knew. Regardless of if there is an SRO or if there's not an SRO, his officers will not be patting down these students. And they will not do it whatsoever, and they were never expected to do so. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that.
we're responsible. So, but that's really clear. And I go back to what I've said before, this is a bigger issue than SRO. And I know I've you and several of you, like it's, I think that the community is clamoring for SROs. And we all know that that's not the answer, right? Like that will not keep people safe in the grocery store, in the churches. It will not keep them safe in our parks. It is, I'm not passing the buck, but I'm really interested in a larger conversation of what have we learned around research. I think that panel you were on, that one gentleman from the University of Health who's done so much research in this area. Last night, Representative Bacon sent Deontay and I a bunch of research, which I've individually texted to all of you, just thinking through some of that. So what do we know about how to keep our students safe in school, but also our city, right? And I think of Suzanne Morris shared, and I know Dr. Marrero, you and I had some conversations on feedback she gave us before she left, that it's not necessarily keeping students safe inside the school, but outside forces coming in. And how are we processing all of this? And again, I just like to acknowledge for all of us, like this city's expecting the 7 of us unpaid volunteer school board members to solve large societal issues. And you too, Dr. Little, like this is huge and this is hard. And so that's why those are some of the things that are on the top of my.
Director Balderman.
If you could speak through your computer, mute your phone and speak through your computer, that works better for those in the room.
All right, is this better? This is good?
Yes.
Hold on. Anyway, I'm gonna start talking. So jotting down some notes here as I was listening to everybody, and over the last 24 hours, like what I'm most interested in is that we as a board take action. And I think the public is expecting us to take action as well. I really agree with what Charmaine was saying about the procedures around how students have safety plans and who does that. Is that an SRO? I mean, that's not really for the board to decide. That's an operational decision for Dr. Marrero and Chief Thomas to figure out. But that leads into everything that we approved under ENS 4. And the other thing too, around Carrie, you mentioned the comms out to the public. That too is part of ENS 4. We talk about clear, accurate information that goes to parents and the public. And it's just not there right now, which is okay, or it's not okay, but to me, I think we need to prioritize this. So this is where I think the resolution is critical. And because it's really all the intent of the resolution is to accelerate the work of ENS 4. And I guess, Aaron, if you could, I mean, is it possible? And if the board is interested, can we pull up the resolution right now and discuss it? If the board open to that idea, I'm open to it, but I would love to know if one, it's legal, and if my colleagues are interested in doing that.
Yeah, I think that would be legal, because again, it has to do with security measures ensuring that we have security measures, and that's one of the notice topics. So I think
Told you last night when I heard about the resolution, I asked several questions and you gave 3 different options. So I need you to share that information with the board, what those options were that you gave Director
Sure.
Baldwin.
so first, the first option would be to, in a public meeting, ask Dr. Marrero to take certain action and then getting a public commitment from Dr. Marrero. So whatever is contained within the resolution, those could just be pointed questions and Dr. Marrero could agree to perform those actions. So that would, and then we would have that commitment publicly and Dr. Marrero keep his word and move through. Second option would be, because of the way that today's meeting was noticed, we actually have an opportunity to do a first and second read today. We are noticed for an afternoon meeting at 3:30, I think. So we can come back from this session, first read, go to the meeting this afternoon, second read, and then vote. No, so this meeting that we're in now, this executive session was originally noticed for, I want to say 3:30 today. But then because of the emergency nature of the situation, we moved it earlier, but that meeting is still noticed. So, yeah, so
Wait, was that labeled as an executive session?
it is, but there's also that, yeah, and then we have that catch-all, right? Update about these issues. And there's clear case law out there that if there's a widely known incident that's occurring in the community and the board notices that they're going to provide an update about that incident, it is possible that they would take action in the form of a vote. So I think we're safe there. So we could go first read when we come back. We can go second read this afternoon, vote to implement policy. Third option is the resolution.
In terms of can you speak on in terms of policy?
Policy governance disfavors resolutions. We're supposed to have policies in place. I spoke with Director Balderman yesterday. The law does not prohibit a resolution. Policy governance prohibits a resolution, right? And so keeping that in mind, and that's the governance structure of the board, resolutions are disfavored. Director Balderman, I don't want to speak for you, but I think where you were last night is, but this is an emergency. This is something that needs to be acted on. I think it sets a difficult precedent without clearly defining what constitutes an emergency, right? I fear of setting a precedent where the board begins to, again, act by resolution. There are places in policy government where resolutions are appropriate, namely, and required. Some resolutions are required by law. Some are appropriate, like it's the board standing in support of legislation. So they're not banned totally by policy governance, but disfavored. The board really should be speaking through policy. But again, not illegal. Yes. No, when we would come back from this, and so the next item on the agenda for today is an update from the board. We could go straight to adjournment. That's an option that's in the facilitation guide, but we do have a placeholder in the agenda for an update and discussion. So that's a space for the board to come back, make a statement, public statement about the events of today, or it's a place where the board can take action in the form of a vote, because we have that language. We would have the first read when we come back from this executive session. So we may have to delay the press conference a bit. If we can get a policy drafted in this space, we would go back after executive session for first read. After the press conference, we do have a 2 o'clock space for policy governance work. We could workshop the policy a little bit more in that space, come back for our noticed meeting at 3:30. Don't go into executive session and just do second read, vote on policy. Yes, Director
I guess I'm, hold on, let me turn this down. Like, what would a policy even look like? Because I mean, we're in the resolution, I mean, it's providing direction to the superintendent. I don't know how we could possibly revise this to be a more proactive, long-term resolution. I mean, would it be beneficial just to pull I want sign off from everybody else. I don't want to force this. But I get, and the other question I had, Aaron, well, while I'm on here, do we need to take a second vote? The resolution mentions suspending EL 1010. Do we need to take a second vote to officially suspend that policy? That would be two different votes?
I think, well, if we move forward with the resolution and the resolution contains the language of suspending EL 1010, I think one vote's fine. If we don't do the resolution, we should have a second vote. And so if we do the policy, we should suspend EL 1010, then vote in the policy. If everything is contained in the resolution, that can be accomplished in one vote.
One thing that we need to figure out, question upon us is, do Director Balderman's resolution that he's sent around, because there's some split in the room. We can't take a vote if we're moving forward, but is there a majority of board members that would like to move forward with the resolution as currently written? So is there a majority, before I'm not going to call you, I'm talking to board. So is there a majority of board members that support moving what Director Balderman has?
Let's phrase it a little different. Does anyone object?
Does anybody object to moving forward with the resolution, Director Balderman? So 2 out of 7.
And resolutions are discontinued. And Director Balderman has been pushing for a year and 3 months since I've been on the board, not to accept anybody's resolution. I should accept it. So for PG, I'm not done speaking. For PG reasons, okay, for the fact that we're moving fast, for the simple fact that a resolution was written by one board member and was covered with only, was it covered with you, Charmaine? Director Balderman. This morning, yeah. I'm uncomfortable moving forward unless I've had time to consider the language, think about it, and also accept whether or not I'm going to be the president over this board that is going to have to go against policy governance, because that is the position that I am being put in if I have to move forward.
Okay.
I have to clarify this question. General Counsel said 2 different things, and so I'm trying to pin down on it. So I've heard Director Gaetan say that it's illegal, and you actually said that it was illegal for us to do a resolution. Yet you also led with it's not desirable, which are 2 different things. Or then you said it was prohibited, but yet there are places when it's appropriate. This could be one such place because the language is ambiguous. So I believe that before we can even have a conversation, we need to level set on that.
So
The question is it legal or legal?
Yeah, you said both. You said that we can do it and we cannot.
So it is not illegal, right? But it is disfavored under the policy governance structure.
But disfavor,
Yeah.
let's talk about what is disfavor.
Policy governance says that the board should only be talking to the superintendent through policy. That there's no resolutions. So what would happen in the past is every idea that a board member came up with, they would draft a resolution. And so it's sort of a piecemeal way of controlling the day-to-day operations of the superintendent. So for that reason, policy governance requires thoughtful policies that provide guardrails around the superintendent's behavior, that gives the superintendent the ultimate flexibility and authority to execute on his operational plan and the strategic roadmap in this case. So for that reason, policy governance does not permit resolutions.
That's different.
Well, it does not permit resolutions. That might be a better way to put it.
I gotta understand.
Yeah.
Then you also said there are instances for policy governance does allow resolution.
Sure. there's exceptions to every rule, right? And in this case, there are statutes that require the board to act through resolution. For example, if we want to put a policy governance does not trump the laws of the state of Colorado. So if the Colorado statute requires the board to act through resolution, for example, when we talk about board member compensation, the statute is clear that the only way to impact board member compensation is through a resolution. Can you ask it again?
So let's make sure that we're, if the board decided to move with Director Balderman's proposed resolution, it is not illegal for the board to do so, correct?
It's not illegal.
But it is not in compliance with our normal policy governance structure.
Correct.
Okay, or,
Yes.
so I got you. We have two board members that have dissented on being out of, and not moving forward with the resolution. That's not for. So I will hear, let's give the superintendent a chance to respond.
The legalese aside, it isn't conflict and a violation. When amended, I have the operational authority under policy governance to come up with any plan that evaluates. Keep that in mind. Not saying that I'm against it, but more if I want to see it for the first time, is commit to something that is beyond what I believe. As you all consider, it is in violation of my.
And stating SROs at your behest. And also saying where, he hasn't, okay.
So, but
I mean, I think that for all intents and purposes, this is from, so I don't have the text in front of me, but from reading the resolution, it reinstates SROs at your request, something that you've asked for. It asks for mental health professionals and to be funded through the city. And 3, it says that this is a temporary suspension of EL 1010 to ensure that you're not in compliance with, out of compliance with board policy. So I think
And something else about Mayor Hancock, what was it?
it directs you to go and find the funding externally for all of this, that we're not paying for this, that the mayor is going to commit to us. With the mayor. We need to walk out of here with a solution.
And just to speak on the language in the contract, it does read that we are supposed to be operating in a policy governance framework as per his contract. We might want to bring Dr. Charles in. Yeah, we might want to bring Dr. Charles in to get his opinion on the place of resolutions in there. Okay.
Yeah, because where I'm at with this, because wait, go ahead, Esra. Where I'm at with this, colleague, because nobody's asked the original sponsor of the resolution, what are your thoughts about all of this? Because I've been called a nigger, a murderer, and a Nazi in the last 24 hours by some of the same folks that we are cloaking to protect right now. We've all received some nasty and hatred emails. Some of our addresses have been posted.
I'm not talking.
So, yes. So when the reason why I support moving forward with this resolution or some sort of action is because our hands have been publicly. If we don't if there is no action out of this board today, the mayor has already said through the superintendent, I will make you do it. And the superintendent has said, I will not comply with your policies. So in order for us as a board to be responsive to community, we have to go into a meeting and pass something today because we have to be responsive to the community. When Luis Garcia was shot, I asked for SROs to come back temporarily. That response in my text was not adhered to. When I've had the conversations with Chief Thomas, who's willing to reimagine the role of an SRO, because I've suggested instead of having a full uniformed cop, what if we made this person more of our admin team? Instead of Officer Hernandez, it's Mr. Hernandez, and we humanize this role. That hasn't been responded to. When it was Mayor Hancock and the Chief of Police and Director Esserman and I with faith leaders, and we sat down at 6 a.m. in the morning at a church, I asked the mayor directly, will you commit to sitting down with the school board? And he did, but he didn't, no commitment followed through. And now we as a board are being pushed in front of the media, being pushed in front of the community as the scapegoat for literally everyone. From, in my opinion, from city council to the mayor, to mayoral candidates, and in some instances, our own employee, where we have been pushed into this spotlight of being the ones that have to respond. And so because we have to respond and meet this moment, we have to walk back into that board meeting and pass something that at least allows the superintendent to temporarily reinstate school resource officers. This resolution does more than that because it talks, and it's fast, I get it. That is a concern of mine because like what happens in the event of some, what precedent do we set? But my thing is, for me, is it reinstates cops. It puts mental health professionals in the buildings because you can't have cops and no counselors. It says we're adding cops and counselors, and it's very temporary, and it directs the superintendent to create a plan that has a comprehensive safety plan by a desired date. And that's something that we need to consider, because we can't walk into here with us being the scapegoat anymore. We need to walk out in front of those cameras and say, the Board of Education heard you. This is our response. Here it is. This is the direction of the superintendent. Figure it out. Our hands have been tied, and we have to untie our own.
There's one person sitting in this room and maybe one person sitting in this building as far as I know. Sorry. Can't simply respond with SROs. It's the easy response. It's the convenient response. But it can't be the only response. It's not just mass shootings. I know that mass shootings are a huge recognize we got a lot of still recognize that we have a tremendous number of school leaders feel hopeless and unsafe. We need to do this, in my opinion, for the safety of our students. It is deeply and our staff and our entire communities as much as we can. We sat in a forum where we listened to experts, single one of which said SROs are a solution to the larger community-wide, nationwide problem that we're having. They have opportunities. Also recognize the pressures of, so in addition to having blood on my hands, the other things that we've all starting to get the let's say this doesn't that I think we have to listen to as well, because we're dealing with students sitting in that auditorium sit silently for 10 minutes. Silently superintendent and his staff ensured that what was happening in the building watched Ms. Walker make sure that what was happening needed that. People telling us for weeks, do something they requested is SRO. But it also expands. Over. Just take up history. Yeah. And we've got people in our meetings and in our communities cheering that. So why was he even in it? The sheriff said we took care of it. Yeah.
It was a big,
Our sheriff.
the sheriff that found his body.
So, what do you mean they took care of it though?
But
They deemed it a suicide.
we can deal with memos and communicate. No matter what I do. Continue to fail to do so. But I will not stand behind as a
And for me, it's my, from, go ahead.
I'm not saying we're the only answer either, but they're not gonna solve the problem at all. They're gonna solve some of the problems, and they're gonna make some of the people feel safer, and the communities, the parents, and the teachers feel better if they're there. Then I think that we should do that.
We have not polled, and I got you, we have not polled, I mean, regardless, we have not polled anybody on if they want to have SROs back. We polled administrators. We haven't done community surveys. We haven't done any of that. My sister goes to East. And so when I get the text message that East was on lockdown, I didn't get it from DPS, for one. I didn't know East was on lockdown. I'm sitting on a couch, laid up, trying to recover from an emergency surgery I had. And my sister is texting me, locks, lights, out of sights. What is going on? And I don't even know what's going on. Grateful that Debbie picked up her phone, because Debbie did not want me texting back. I was in a group because she picked up the phone and called me. This is personal for a lot of us. This is the third time that I've had to ask myself if my sister is a student that's been shot or if she's going to come home tonight. The third time. This is personal for us. Director Esterman is right. SROs aren't the only answer. They may be a symptom of an answer, but we've not done a school-wide community vote. We're responding to loud folks, but we haven't asked the Denver Public Schools community. If we could send it to a referendum of the people, I would be supportive of that. Send it to a November ballot and let the people decide. Whatever the people decide, the people decide. But we can't do that. But right now we have to respond. And I am the person who sat there with Jen Bacon in a room, and we came together and we said, we've heard from our communities for 10 straight years about the negative impacts of SROs on Black and brown children, the over-policing that's happened, the instances where students have been criminalized and it even had their reputations tarnished by SROs. And we heard all of that data. We even heard from survivors of a school shooting themselves in Parkland, who said when they shot up our school, and SRO was there, and 17 of my classmates still were murdered. We've seen since Parkland, Uvalde, Santa Fe, St. Louis has metal detectors and cops in schools. Kids still die. And what we have to make sure when whatever we do, if it's this resolution or a policy, we still can't guarantee safety. We have now taken the onus of being the Congress, the mayor, the city council, and the legislature. And we can't do that. We can't fix broken gun laws. We have passed resolutions. We have passed proclamations. We have been responsive, and we still get pushed out in front of everybody. And everybody has made the 7 of us the enemy, including you. And that's not fair to us. So we got to come up with a resolution if we're moving forward with this resolution or not, regardless of if it is legally, if it's in the confines of the contract, or if we need to do a rush policy or something. We have to walk out. We have a duty to walk out of this room with something that we vote on today that reinstitutes SROs, because our hands have been tied.
We give Director Balderman a chance and
Director Bottom.
and then
Balderman.
And I spoke with 6 Black female students. And this is what their request was. And ironically, they shared with me, they were planning on having a conversation about school security today. And what they shared was they are looking for responsible, intentional, and comprehensive. They were split. One did not want SROs back into the school because she felt unsafe. One wanted metal detectors. And a number of them, well, there was only one that wanted metal detectors. And the other 5 said absolutely. It won't do anything. The guns will still impact the school. But what they did agree on was something needs to be done. We don't know what that something is. If we're doing SROs, it needs to be thoughtful. They can't come back the way they were. It needs to look different. Because they recognize at 15, 16, and 17, the emotional and psychological impact on themselves and their friends with having armed police officers in the building, because they actually comment on the police presence currently at and said he still got away with officers at the school. SRO in the building would not have made a difference. We need to do this differently. We have to think differently on what we're doing. They also expressed frustration about the original resolution, and they said, we're okay with that, but what we're not okay with is there was no plan. And they asked, if you do something, don't let it be performative. Have an actual plan. Let us know what we're getting. And 6 mental health personnel for all of our schools wasn't adequate in their office. They asked for more mental health resources. That came directly from students. And all I did was ask questions. I didn't prime them for anything. I simply asked a question. This was a conversation they had planned on having today with administration at East to eventually have with either the board or superintendent, or I'm not sure what their next. But that was their request, and I believe the resolution as written, not as written, because there are things that I believe that need to change, which is what I would like to get to in changing that. These are the things that they were asking for. They want something that's thoughtful, responsible, comprehensive. It's a tall order. I personally would like to do the resolution, but I am open to option number. Yeah. There was another option.
Directing the superintendent in public.
Yeah.
Essentially, you just make a public ask of the superintendent of what you want that's in the resolution. He would give you his confirmation publicly that he will undertake the work, if that's something he's willing to agree to. And then
And I'm open to that discussion. So you're not blindsided, and we can hammer out what that ask will look like. But I agree with Director Esserman. I agree with Dr. Olson. I agree with Director Lindsay. And I agree with Director Anderson and Director Balderman. I haven't heard from Director Gaitan about this. But I agree, we have to do something. And time is not on our side. I sympathize the most with Director Olson because of the processing. But you understand that now is the time to act. We don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. We have to move quickly. I had shared, I got a reach out from the New York Times. So, no, they emailed the board, no, they contacted me personally. And then we directed them to the board. So, did you have a question for me?
Well, got initially offered. Last thing I did was take a look at this and add some comments to it, so it's not entirely. And there was other people, but there were other. They're being the superintendent.
well, you can. I just don't want folks to think that we here, right? But in the room, discussing it, getting input in the debate format, discussion format, allowing the superintendent to chime in and saying, yes, right? Like you guys can come to an agreement in the room.
That would reflect the superintendent.
Sure. Yeah.
What's in the
I think that's what Dr. Moore was saying when we started, right? Is that this group needs to work together to come up with a solution here. So yes.
There is one thing that Chief, and I talked with Chief on it today about getting a safety plan for me because they've received some things from so one thing that he did want me to stress to you all is that whatever officers come in schools, they're being pulled off the streets. So that will definitely be, we need to get that needs to be a part of comms is whatever, regardless if it's 18 again, or if it's 160 or whatever it is, they are coming off the streets. And so if there's an issue, if there is an issue in the community and police have a delayed response, the response most likely will be, oh, we didn't have an officer at this time like we used to because DPS requested us to come back. We have to be responsive. He's like, we'll make it happen. But he was very clear, officers will come off the streets, and he was very clear, nothing outside of what they were already doing in schools there won't be anything new. So if there are multiple students, and I don't know why this notion is out there that SROs would have did this pat down. They wouldn't have. I was a disciplinarian at a school at North High School for 2 years. I always did pat downs with the CSO. It was me and the CSO. And if it was a female, it was our female dean and the female CSO. We would do the pat downs. The CSO would do the body pat down. We would go through the backpack. So I'm not sure where this notion that SROs would have did this pat down or searched anybody, that wouldn't have happened. Two, he was very clear. His officers will not be performing any pat downs on students. That won't happen. So that's not going to be a thing. Three, also, one of the things that we have not talked about that we should definitely send condolences to, even if he was a school shooter, is the student that took his own fucking life. We lost a student yesterday, and everybody has painted him. You heard from Director Esserman. People have painted this young man in horrible light, ignoring all of the mental health challenges that he had. The most heartbreaking photo was seeing a baby picture or a picture of this young man with a fish because he loved to fish. But most folks in this room didn't know that the student loved to fish. But there's a parent blocks away from here that had their home raided yesterday, that didn't have a child come home yesterday. And when it is white people shooting up schools, we always go to the mental health aspect. We always talk about how troubled they were as a young person. We always cloak and make an excuse. But this Black boy's picture has been painted across America as somebody who is the most dangerous threat to anybody in the state right now. And he took his own life, and none of us have said anything about that. We've not sent our condolences to that family. And that family lost a child yesterday. Yes, we had employees shot. I'm not making an excuse for that whatsoever. Yes, our students were startled and scared and were put in a dangerous situation. I'm not making excuses for that. But what we did do unintentionally with our own actions, we disclosed the student had a 504. We disclosed personal information about him. And now that picture of that boy has been painted across America as a deadly threat. And nobody gets the cloak and excuse about his mental health challenges. And now there is calls in our own email inboxes where they want us to eradicate and expel any student that has any sort of trouble in their background that comes to us. And I'm not sure if that's going to be a request that is adhered to. If it is, I can't be a part of that practice. We can't be a district that just throws kids away because they had an incident or something. We got schools for that. Maybe East wasn't the place for him. That was on us because he went to East. That we should have been able to look at that and say, hey, Prep Academy is going to be a much better place for you. It's right next door to East. So I would love to know what conversation outside of this resolution do we plan to have for the student that committed suicide yesterday. More people, allegedly, more students are not dying by mass shootings. They're not dying in schools. They're dying by suicide. We lost another child to suicide yesterday, allegedly. While police officers go on Twitter and gloat about his death. We took him out, we got him. But we're all quiet about that.
I think we're at the point for the board is we need to decide to be bold enough today to humanize that child. I'm ready for it. We're gonna get pushback, blowback, but I'm ready for it. I do have questions, concerns. I know mom brings this. I just want to put it on the table of how the information was released on the student. That's a concern. And I would guess that that's something we probably have to talk about.
In the interest of time, real quick, Balderman, President Gaitan, and then we need to come up if we're moving forward with option one, which is we're going to ask directed questions to the superintendent. I have concerns with that. Or option two, option two was the resolution, was that option three? So if we're moving forward, option one or option three, I have concerns with option one. I can go into those later, but let's hear from Director Balderman, President Gaitan. Then we'll allow the superintendent to respond since you've been quiet for the last hour. And then we need to start figuring out what are our action plans, because it sounds like we need to, whatever we decide this really needs to become the public portion of the hearing. Yeah. Yeah,
All
we
right.
can't decide which option, right here. We can't decide the option.
I think you can. I think you can probably decide that action needs to be taken. We've already decided that. It's probably safe to decide how best to communicate that plan, but then, and we can even just look at the resolution and see which parts of those want to come into the option that's taken. I do want to reiterate though that the superintendent's contract, and Dr. Charles never responded, would seem to prohibit the use of a resolution if that is what policy governance is, right? So I would want to get Dr. Charles' opinion there. So I would lean towards one or two. And so anyway, that said, we can
Create a, so we do have a posted meeting, right?
we do.
So we can create a policy in the interim of 1 PM and because to be very honest, y'all, we should not have a press conference until we know what we're doing.
And you know what else we can do is so the way that we implement policy is also in our policy. If we voted to suspend that policy due to the emergency nature, the emergency nature of today, we can probably bypass the first, second read and move right to a vote. We would need to have a supermajority vote in favor of suspending the policy, and then we would have a motion on what that looks like, right? It's temporary, and then moving forward with the policy vote. So probably a short statement about the emergency nature of this and that, so we can work on that language as well.
Because this in the interest of time I hear you. For the interest of time, I think it is wise that we communicate to Will if we agree. That we communicate to Will that we need to postpone the press conference at least until later on this afternoon, because we shouldn't be rushing right now to create something before 1 o'clock if we're not going to meet that deadline. I would suggest that we say, hey, just have the press on standby for later on today. Let them know we're coming. But I don't think we should lock ourselves into the 1 PM deadline, because we should at least work out what if we're going to go one way or another, we at least need to work that out. And I don't think we're going to be able to do that. And also, I think folks deserve a break in the next hour. And because we're bumping up against the hour timeline, is there any opposition to telling Will, like, hey, let the press know, just be on standby at this point, and we'll let you know what 20 minutes before we come out. That gives them adequate time to go and assemble.
Well, I consider your idea, but I really want to hear from both of them, and I want to share some thoughts too.
Just got a text from Dr. Smith that about 100 kids just left.
Please,
Yeah,
on the
and
way here.
doesn't say where. Some kids have left now, probably 100, not sure where they're headed. Didn't sound like it was towards central office. But not here.
You just start talking.
Okay, so I wanted to, sorry, provide a little more context, and I want to acknowledge that, doing a resolution is against PG and possibly in violation of, or is in violation of Dr. Murray's contract. But I also want to highlight that the memo we received yesterday clearly states that that Dr. Morero does not intend to follow our policies, which is also in violation of his contract. So just with that context, I wanted to put that out there. I am not on board on doing publicly asking Dr. Morero if he'll do these things. I think it needs to be in writing through a resolution. Dr. Morero, if you feel that if you want to decline our request, that's your choice for your contract. But I think the board putting a statement out there of where we stand and what we care about, and that we are taking action like the public is asking us to do. The other thing is I really don't like the idea of doing a policy that doesn't make sense, because policies require a 1-year runway. So to say, we're going to put a policy in place, but we're going to have you do it right now, that's not how policies work either. So, resolution, let's just get our statement out that really, this is a statement. This is what we're committing to. And That's where I land. I believe, I don't remember which option it was, but I believe that we should vote on a resolution. So it's very clear where we stand.
Scott, what's the difference between, or I almost called you Attorney General, whatever your title is, Aaron, what's the difference between titling it a proclamation and a resolution? What implications are different?
So a resolution is it's like a legally binding document, so it would commit this board to upholding certain actions. A proclamation is more of an aspirational document and saying, this is what we expect, but there's no real teeth to a proclamation.
I'm gonna share just a few thoughts. One around leading high school. One is about all of us. I have asked it if we were on my back. To speak and engage with the local students who have been asking and begging for help because they've been telling me that they feel ignored. They feel that my voice is ignored. And I had said I would make it and realize that I'm still a voice at a different elementary school. So I go to check out my husband. And in speaking with Director Adjournment, I would and sharing with us the idea of bringing in 2 armed officers to East High School. We both acknowledge this decision to and 3 of you, I would call the other 2, and that's what we do. Yeah. She called me. There was a commitment on Adjournment's behalf that we would call the individual. So I want to share with you how the communication at East High School. We then were aware that Dr. Alvarado would go talk to the press. We were made aware of that. We knew what no problem. Nothing. I left. I came here to TPS admin building, and Director Esterman had to go check our and leave and do everything. I just want to share what that was the day he was trying to coordinate all of this. And neither one of us even thinking eventually because later. Yeah, so we had a very long day, Director Esterman and I, and I just want to share with you, it was a very intense, all of us, right? And I actually didn't. So I share that with you. I want to also emphasize we is our one sole employee. We all should be engaged in terms of communication. Because there's a lot of one-on-ones where I didn't find out much later in the day. And people were not informing me. And so there's a lack of accountability between all of us. And so we want communication finance between all of us. Now, the person alluded to that he is to directly communicate with him so that he can come to me and he has a policy governance. And Vice President Anderson came to an agreement that any information I get directly to Alvarado, I would then pass it on to him so that he would pass it on to me. Yes, surgery, we'll get back on track with that. something that we recently started. We will get that. So I just remind you that if we follow policy, line of communication. So expect to warn Vice President. You all heard. Email, past communication. That one. I'm not done. There's that. Piece. We could talk about this at a board retreat or whatever other meeting we need to have in terms of communication. In terms of the resolution, if I'm hearing one correctly, except for Director Lindsay and myself, again, my issue is not so much the contents of the resolution, and my concern is if I agree to this and moving forward, how and that we're not going to make habit and precedence to just random resolutions whenever we feel like it. Okay. So,
Debbie just texted and said that they have a room full of media on 14. She does not advise.
okay. So, if we all move forward with the resolution, I have at least 3 changes. Minor, in my opinion, minor changes, and I would consider it. I am highly concerned about the fact that we would, you know, there's issue around the superintendent contract, right? So, if we are in violation of that, are we ready to accept the, you know, whatever comes out of the violation? But I need you all to consider that and think about it. I need to tell me what that message is that I have to give the public. At least, at the very least, help me prepare. I recommend that we go presenting the language in the resolution more as a, we ask and say that in public. I'd rather get a public commitment from him than the actual resolution, because I don't want us to be accused of being in violation of his contract. Three recommendations that I would, and if we go with the content of the resolution, I think April, the end of April is too soon. We need to push it to June. When we ask them to develop a long-term plan, a long-term safety plan, a month is too soon. We need to ask him to come up with a very comprehensive community engagement plan. We'll vote on it, and then we vote in June, or we vote in June, or accept his long-term safety plan in June.
So you're looking at the topic.
The content of the resolution.
So we're moving to a new topic. Because at first we were just sharing generalized information. So you're moving us to the topic. It's actually.
I feel like this is
in the public meeting, I would be willing to do that if you all make some of those adjustments. Instead of April, June. We need to be very, we need to be very specific. If we want community engagement, we need to give them the runway. There's a couple of other things. You know, we can't just be specific about 2 mental health supports. There could be more that are needed. Could be more social works that are needed. I just don't appreciate the specifics until we hear from our community.
So are we going to then move into discussion of the content of the resolution? I think that would be more appropriate. I think presenting this as an outline and then publicly getting to the contours of, but actually that's not necessarily true, because oftentimes when we do resolutions, they come prepared and we're ready to present a resolution. So I think
one of the three options.
I think, yeah, I think having a course of action, yeah. What before, I'm sorry, but, small rally outside the Capitol right now, okay. But, yeah, come on in. Debbie is asking if the board isn't ready to make a statement, can Dr. Marrero make a statement? The media.
Concern with option going on. Resolution. My concern with doing the directive is because you've already said you won't follow board directive, even in policy. I don't trust that you would, that this is not binding for us to follow. If we did, will you commit to X, Y, and Z? I just don't trust that you would follow.
Can I request before we move to this new topic, that we actually give Dr. Marrero to respond to everything that we said, because we haven't given him an opportunity before we move to a new topic, which is why I have policy about this. And then we'll get clarification.
There was quite a bit of questions, so I'm not gonna be able to answer all. So here in no particular order, some that I can. Things are well. One is at home, one should be going home. That one that's going home today did recover from the diaphragm. I'm gonna skip over in terms of those conversations. Although it may not appear for some, or maybe in the public, trust me when I tell you that events that I gave board on all 4 occasions there cannot be put into place, right? Threatening your lives, quite frankly, in certain cases. And it's not easy to say, I hear you, there's more to the story, and moving on to how can I help? In terms for tomorrow, mental health supports are available for staff at 12 sites, and also after school. What would be after school during the day for parents and children? In terms of how did the information of the student get out, I do not know in terms of the picture. In terms of the student information, or watching the press conference, I whispered Chief Thomas here on a couple of occasions, telling him going too far, you can't share this. He and the mayor decided to put it out there, and they did. Sorry that they did, but the DPS is not held liable. So that was their position. In terms of Director Baldwin, in terms of the resolution, acknowledging that you feel that my memo is a violation of EL 1010, I did say that, but I'm going to stress again, I use the term likely because my interpretation is that it's not permanent, it's not forever, it's till the end of the school year. So I refute that is a violation. I know that it can be interpreted as such, hence why I put it down. In terms of answer the student info, in terms of the memo, why it wasn't confidential, is the attorney here works for the district. I know that I'm a trading officer for the Board-Superintendent. So he found out possibly at the same time that you all did, or right beforehand, don't know. So it was not a privileged email, right? Think about my position, saying, hey, I may be violating policy, I'm not going to copy the attorney, right? So that's why it was not. In terms of the plan, and here's where I'm struggling. I understand the need for action, and I do feel like the community definitely needs something. But the assumption that we as a team aren't being responsive is incredibly offensive, right? So yes, we may not have desired timelines that you have. I don't know if it's an April, June. I do not know, because I simply do not know what resolution you guys have been working on. But we all agree, yes, that the SROs are not the answer. It is what the community wants here right now, without a doubt, without a doubt. So I don't think that can be. I like the idea of a ballot, right? Because then I'm still on temporary income November, deciding to do it. So I'm the leader of the district, and what I've noticed is that there is a little bit of attempt to take action, but action needs to be delivered into policy. So conversations with Chief Thomas, although I understand that we don't, that's not your role, that's my role.
You discussing my safety because of your words is my role.
Anderson, and I don't want to go down this road, but what he said is that you demanded 80 officers, and he says, I cannot do this, please let me know when we can speak. But my point is, I don't believe him, and I'm not saying that you said that. What I'm saying is that you shouldn't have had that conversation. That's on me. I'm willing to accept that. I know it's a heavy task, but I have an incredible team to do that work. So what I'm asking the board is to honor BSR 1, BSR 2. Tell me what you all feel I need to accomplish for this district. I'll give feedback to see if it's feasible, and then judge me if I fail. That's
Policies. EL 1010 openly stated that you plan to defy board members. We've told you what our expectation is, and the board never came together and said, we're gonna, we should have at least said we are rescinding this temporarily, then you make your statement.
So here's what I find. If we're gonna go down policy, let's go down policy, right? And this is not my intention to throw any board member on the bus, but I had two in front of me. And I heard very loud and clear from at least one of them that you were rescinding EL 1010. I heard it, right? I heard it. So were you not? So if I have that information, I have to leave the district. I'm assuming that the board is going this way. There will not be conflict. I'm making the decision. It was the right decision. It was the right decision.
I spoke with Director Paul. Also ask you to speak. If I may, I was in that phone call with Debbie Friedman yesterday morning when she called you, and you did say that you wanted to rescind 1010.
We were down to 7, y'all. So now y'all want to pin it on me, but then the conversation is if four board members didn't say it. That's the thing. Is I don't understand how we can get from one board member saying that they support something and then saying, oh, that's the will of the board. That's not the will of the board. 4 board members did not say rescind EL 1010. 4 board members did not say go out there and make a statement that puts us in a shitty position. That did not happen from majority of the board. Your words put us in danger because you made the community look at us and act like we weren't responsive to them. We didn't even have a chance to go out there and say, hey, this is the board action because you issued a statement. So 4 of us, unless 4 board members in that call, did 4 board members say we're rescinding EL 1010? Or was it just one that said we should rescind EL 1010? And then we have a discussion because we didn't have a discussion. 2 board members, I didn't even get brought into most of the conversation for yesterday. And I'm the vice president of the school board. So hold on, because I'm just confused on how we continue to say, you know, we're operating in policy here, but we're not going to operate in policy here. If you're going to ignore board executive limitations, then that's fine. That is a matter we will have with you. But we, at least as a board, deserve to go out to our communities as their duly elected representatives and stand before them and tell them where we stand on these issues. Because right now, I'm the one being called a nigger. I'm the one being called a murderer. I'm the one being called a Nazi. My address has been posted. I called the chief of police this morning because I have somebody that sent me my address and said, hey, just wanted to let you know your address has been posted. So in our conversation, I said, hey, Chief Thomas, what is the plan for individualized safety? He said he's going to reach out to all the board members if they desire to have individualized safety plans. Where does the police officers come from? If we pull them from if we're going to ask for SROs, if it's from 2 to 80, where does the SROs come from? From the streets. Those are information, those are questions. While you may think it's in your purview, we all need to know about those things. All of us, because we're the ones who are out there. The school board is the ones being blamed for this. You've made yourself the hero. Everybody is applauding you. Everybody is supporting you right now. We got the emails thanking you. Go SROs. Thank you for your courage, Superintendent Moreno, but fuck the rest of the 7 board members. Those are the emails. Resign today. Recalls talking about on all of us. Well, they can't do it because Director Lindsay hasn't been in office long enough, but for 6 out of 7 of us. But you're the hero right now. You are. And all of us are facing the brunt from your letter, from your actions, your words, in accordance with the mayor's unilateral decisions. Chief Thomas has been amazing, in my opinion. He has had numerous opportunities to push the board under the bus, but he has never done that, in my opinion. At least publicly, he hasn't. So I'm livid because I'm the one who wrote the goddamn resolution in the first place with Jennifer Bacon, presented it to the board, and 3 of us on this board voted on it. I'm the one who's being called a nigger, a Nazi, and a murderer. Talking about the blood of Luis Garcia is on my hands. The blood of those two deans is on my hand. The suicide of that young Black man that you still never got to is on my hands. That is what the media is putting out there. That is what people in community are putting out there. That's not fair for any of us. Any of us. So whatever whatever back and forth you want to have, go ahead. But you've made yourself the hero. Congratulations. You're the hero of the moment while the rest of us are suffering.
Thank you for sharing what you just shared. If you think that I'm not being called to resign and call those sorts of words, you're sadly mistaken. Okay? You're sadly mistaken. I'm the one that has to go to each one of these leaders since I've arrived and they say, do something. How? Do something. So you're truly, truly personalizing it, and I'm acknowledging that you are by far the target. Because I've seen what's out there. But you're not alone, myself included. Okay? People are calling for my resignation because I ain't pro-cop all of a sudden. I have a career beyond this. 50% of the districts don't see me from here on out. I know that, right? Because now I'm painted as the blue guy. We're all in this together, right? It may not seem that way, but I'm not concerned about being the savior, the hero. I'm not, because I don't think that will be the story when it's all said and done. I've come to that conclusion. I need you all to come to that conclusion as well. That it's not about who does what, and it's more about the how. So I'm okay with written statements. I'm okay with not being in front of the camera, just so you know. Not concerned about being a hero, because 50% of the people will hate me as they are right now. I have a life well beyond Denver Public Schools, I realize that. 50% of the districts won't ever look at me as a candidate. So I have prepared a statement that I don't know if we're going to be able to share today, expressing the fact that there is people applauding what happened to Austin. I'm not going to get into the suspicion because I did get a text from someone late night saying we got him, and I'll address that the way that I need to. Is someone of importance and a decision maker. But I am prepared to open up whenever we get in front of the camera with some prepared words that I created yesterday. I will share that it was a suicide. I don't have any other knowledge that it's not a suicide. But he was found, from what I understand, next to his car, which means that possibly that out, which to me alludes to maybe there was some sort of blame that happened. I don't want to speculate. In terms of support, we sent over a team to the home. That's as much as we have in terms of Austin. We don't have any information in terms of his services.
I make the request if it's appropriate. Well, I'm going to make the request and determine where it's appropriate. But the releasing of his information is at this matter. Can you, because I think it has to come from you, state that we did not release the information. I mean, you don't have to stand like that, and that we comply with all state and laws. I mean, I just want to make sure that it's clear that we care about all of our students, even the ones that are troubled. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? I think we have to leave it that this shop.
Time permitting, I'll do that. So first,
Are we there?
but one is at home. He was incredibly supportive. And this thing, here's what I heard, right? Humanizing is we did lose a child. But the one that was responsive said that he shot them both, stood over them, got and went like this. And then something happened, then decided not to shoot. He was attempting to kill them. And then, glory to God, he decided to run. That's hard to hear. That was hard to hear. And this man, I don't know what he deserves, because his family, directed towards you, and that was hard, right? Because what can I do? Speak to me, speak to me, speak to me. So then they gave it to me. And I believe you may know that family, because they were calling you Tate. Then I got to see our staff member, and he was in a totally different space, all smiling, thank you for your support, I'll be okay. Don't blame the kid, don't blame the kid, don't blame the kid, just miss my heart, don't blame the kid, I love these kids, I love these kids. So, it's just a mix of emotions. Although I heard when he got home that reality set in, started to get a little bit more anger or to a good point. I did not get a chance to speak to the other one who was in surgery. But that's what he did share with me. He stood over both of us. I don't know why he didn't shoot again. That's not to be shared, but he possibly could have killed them. Obviously, at one point was intended. Okay, take this. But also, well, individual. Conversation that the three of us had. And it is regardless of what. What's for this. But it's there.
get scared. Assuming anything I'm saying. Is incumbent. And it's been what I've been pushing. It's what I wanted out of it. But the problem. This resolution, as you suggested, when we communicated last night, that comes out in that tweet out of frustration. And that's not, I hope you feel that as a personal one. It's a matter of.
Say this real quick. So much you want to hear from me first. Last night, after a lot of consideration, I have drafted a letter of resignation. And I have not decided to sign it just yet. But I am considering resigning from this board and plan to tell my intentions to the district later on this evening or tomorrow. I'm be a father for Khalil. And right now I don't feel safe. I don't feel like DPS is going to provide me the safety that I need. And I don't believe that DPD is going to provide me the safety that I need. Again, I haven't signed it and sent it officially to President Gaitan. I have definitely drafted it, but I don't feel the district is doing enough to protect me. I don't feel DPD is doing enough to protect me. And if I end up getting killed over this stuff, all hell better break loose from my family. And so I want to be very transparent with all of you that this, even just being a board member, isn't safe. But I can't go out there and say that because then I look like the victim, or I try to paint myself as the victim. But the shit we are going through, at least me, I can only speak for me. The fear that I am going through right now is absurd. I can't even see my son this weekend. I told his mom, do not bring him to the house. Do not bring him to the house. Had to change my voter registration to confidential. I have tried to take every step to protect myself. And I don't know if we're on the same page with this anymore. I just can't continue to put myself through this anguish. And it probably will make it a joyous day in DPS if Ayante is no longer on the school board, whatever. But for me, I am the one who right now out of the 7 of us that's getting hit the hardest. I don't know what to, I'm not going up there to say anything to defend my position on this. I have been called by the New York Times as well. I've been called personally by CNN. I've been called by News Nation, by Fox News, all asking statements from me, not of the board, to my direct number, asking, will you come on our shows at this time and deliver a response since you're the one who took the SROs out? You're the one who wanted them gone so bad. Now they're coming back. How do you feel? What's your response? So I'm being transparent. I'm here to support for today. I'll communicate directly with the president by the end of this afternoon what my intentions are, if I plan to continue on or if I'm going to resign. But you all need to know that I don't feel safe on this board anymore. And I think that there could be a possibility somebody is going to take out their misguided anger on me. And the next thing we know, folks are gonna say, oh, he was such a great young man. While people cry over my body at a funeral. Khalil deserves better.
Thank you for saying that. And for the district, I don't. I'm really. He's off the table, I know it's still recording. That sister, pretty much, I come back and report. It was that one. Correct. And that was just the impact. You know, I'm really comparing, yes, I've gotten paid well as well, nothing compares to what he's gotten in trouble. The absolute. I'm telling you all, it's his decision. I don't know if we can protect him. At least not at the meeting.
Can I say one thing real quick? I just listening to Ayante made me think that in many ways, this resolution could provide some cover for Ayante, showing that we are trying to do something. We're rescinding EL 1010, something to consider.
May I ask a question? Just to address what you just stated, if there is a resolution that is talking about rescinding 1010, well, there is a possibility for unification based on the discussion that's happening right now between the board and the superintendent, where you basically say, agreed with it, however, here's the stipulation on training for SROs and things of that nature. I don't know if you all have considered that. I've not been a part of any conversations. I'm just saying that would be one way to move forward in a unified manner and still preserve the dignity and the safety of board members.
The question was, do you feel is it a violation of policy government?
Yeah, so the resolution, what's this?
If you want to start reading it. And we haven't had editing. Document. Well, so can I share?
I think we're fine to start the conversation.
No, it's fine. I haven't looked at this for a really long time.
They're in
I
Leanne's
can
office.
review it. I would like to add somewhere in here, it's not in here, that we include what we learned from the year-long process. We did not just remove SROs. We passed the resolution, the year-long process of what that looked like. And what you and I have a call with Suffers, yeah. So like the website's still up, like what did we learn from that process? From what families, because you and I were on Spanish people in the Vietnamese one, if I remember. And what did we learn from that can help inform whatever next step we have? And I'm really concerned about any type of survey that might go out. And here's why. I agree with community engagement, but thinking that our district is comprised of like 75% white teachers, and just knowing the lens that comes from, I'm worried that might be. Throw that out there.
I just also think just reading this briefly here, I don't have all the details, but just looking at this, is there some reason? Okay, so is there some reason why this is a resolution rather than an executive limitation that you would put on the superintendent? So that we can have the first reading today and
To do
second reading today, or whatever the situation is? Yeah.
I mean, Dr. Charles, I mean, doing a policy requires like a 1-year runway. We're essentially doing a directive. If we tell Dr. Murrow what to do today, that's a directive. I don't care what we call it. It's a directive, which is against policy governance. So I don't even know how we would put this into a resolution or to an EL, because really what this is saying is, Dr. Marrero, we want you to move forward with ends 4 as quickly as possible.
Right, and so the reasonable interpretation that you received on ends 4 talked about the safety of.
That was EL 11. That was EL 11, not ends 4.
Got it, so EL 11. And then you also received the ends 4 reasonable interpretation as well. That was approved last month, I believe. So between the two of those, the conflict existed that if Dr. Marrero would have to comply with ends 4, student staff safety, you had this situation with gun violence, and we've all talked about this as a board and team. And so the two juxtaposed together did not gel together, right? So there were some conflicts. So we're setting measures both in both ends 4 and both in EL 11 and in EL 10. So the question, what this is begging, just to address your point, Director Balderman, is that we have a situation where where this resolution, if you want to give a directive to the superintendent, you most certainly could do it through an executive limitation. We can expedite that process. Yes, this becomes very operationalized, but that's the whole point of an executive limitation, so that you limit the superintendent. Now, if there was no conflict between the two, but between the 3 policies, ends 4, ends 11, and ends 10, then that would be considered a blatant violation of your request. But the interpretation is already in documented form for your review.
Oh boy, I want to avoid the other issue at hand of us being in violation of this contract.
I just want to give another message from Debbie. Press are starting to get restless. Fox 31 and Denver 7 are going to go to breaking news when the press conference starts. They want to be able to coordinate that with their station, I guess. Since she asked, do you want me to tell the media it'll be at 2 o'clock? This way they can get a break and have lunch. But if we tell the media 2, it has to be 2. We can't keep pushing back the start time.
So this is what they was talking about. Get this right. If we give them notice that they want to get lunch, they should. Okay, yes. So
I think what Debbie's asking for is a firm start time that she can communicate. And I don't know. I'm just putting it out there.
I mean, we've got national news.
We can't go out there before the press without.
I mean, I think we're getting close. If we continue through this conversation,
Or at
we are
least
getting somewhere.
We have to go and, because if we're gonna pass a policy, we have to go and vote and pass the policy and then go to the.
It only takes 5 minutes, but if we get through the conversation now, vote in 5 minutes. Then we do it.
Yeah, Dr. Charles, I looked at the reasonable interpretations we received were the most recent ones were only ELs. I see nothing from ends. I'm talking about getting a reasonable interpretation and an operational plan around the ends policy that we voted on in last month. Not the one we passed a year and a half ago. That's old. That's about COVID still. This resolution is about what we just passed in February to accelerate that work.
got it. The final thing.
Well, we need to get Michelle's take on it. Do you want to go for another report on this? Right, and then go to press at 3. or hurry up, get through this in the next, and stick to the original plan?
I think this topic is heavy enough and important that it deserves time, that it takes. And I understand from my perspective, I understand that may not be your thing for the media. But the Denver community deserves us to take the amount of time that we need in this setting, because we can do those things. And let's be clear. Community, community, community. That's me. However, not however, and when you are in an emergency situation, it calls for different action. I do like to take my time in making decisions, but I understand the urgency and that we have to move. So yes, I believe that we need to take, I'm not saying 3, I'm not saying 2:30, I'm saying those students said they wanted us to be thoughtful and intentional before we came to them with the solution. That is what the students asked for.
Sure.
Is the message that we are not going to commit to any specific time?
You know, we're gonna have a press conference today. The board walks out there, when we walk out there as a 7 with the superintendent, that's when we walk out there and whoever's there is rolling. If CNN and NBC and all them other folks want to leave, fine. They'll get the message.
Okay, let me hear from Charmaine.
I mean, I'm on the fence about it, everybody.
Take our time maybe and tell the press, be ready for them at 3 o'clock, or leave it open-ended. What are your thoughts?
Don't be century, because we're gonna need to break ourselves after we finish discussing. And, I'd like the idea of saying, give me like 30 minutes.
And Balderman.
I have no preference on the press conference schedule.
You all decide on route 1, 2, 3, going in terms of 3. And if it's gonna be a 1 or 2, why don't we have that conversation public? Some information. It's not as if the conversation is going through.
Is directive.
Here's the rest of it. That's what I.
Could we turn this into a written directive and it still be binding? Authored by, and then just all of us sign off on it and saying, this is a letter from the, literally just take out the whereas
Memo
thing and just say
from the
a
board.
memo from the board. Here, we hereby direct these things, sign the Board of Education, and we release it and say, this is something that we have directed the superintendent in writing to do.
Before he answers, I know there was an open question. Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
So, and it's done, so part of these conversations. So because of the urgent nature of the situation, right, that we have discussed in here, because I know the yours discussed in here that this is an emergent situation and this is not a renewed practice for the board, that this is not a direction that beyond this, any of us have any interest in going into, that it is.
If we just do what, I mean, sorry, but just do what Marrero did and acknowledge in our letter that this will likely violate our current practices. This will likely go against our current, if we do a written, I'm thinking of a written memo now, because everybody's.
So what I'm saying is I hear your point. I think that's a valid point, right? So if it's a directive to the superintendent, then it doesn't fit into an executive limitation because you're not giving him any sort of leeway to do anything else. No, then, under policy governance,
Can't be held.
he cannot be held accountable for if this does not work or something else comes up as a result. So I just want you to be aware of that as we move forward in the discussion. Go ahead, Karen.
No, I didn't know if there was a speaking order because I stepped out. What if we send a letter, the 8 of us together, and it's a letter to the community, sort of the board to Marrero or Marrero to the board, and we say, these are commitments we're making to the community. As a board, we agreed we're gonna suspend this, or as a board and the superintendent, we're suspending BL10. As a board, together with the superintendent, we want a safety plan by the end of school year 22, 23, everything that's in here. But it's a statement from the 8 of us to the community.
That's what I was talking about.
Right.
Say is that it's going to really lay the foundation, it's a unified approach. We understand something needs to happen. We know that the superintendent communicated something different. Here's how we're moving forward as a team of 8 in addressing this.
So you're saying yes to that.
Right. So
My only concern is I think that, in my opinion, we need to be very clear. This is where patient stands. I love the whole unity piece. I get that we can show unity at a press conference, but I think this community, for the sake of both optics and also safety, we need to be seen as giving you this directive. We came together and said, we heard the community, we spent hours talking about it. Here is the directive as your employer to the superintendent, and this is the way that the Board of Education is moving forward. And that can be, so we don't have any kind of legal jargon, resolution memo, like it could just be a memo signed off by all 7 of us, and we read it out when we get back downstairs. We say, this is the memo the Board of Education is giving to the superintendent as we are his employer, the sole employee. These are the things that we are requesting of each one of us. Takes a bullet point, we read it off, and we say, Superintendent Marrero, the Board of Education hereby directs you to do X, Y, and Z.
So can I hear from the both of you on this?
right. Just a quick question to you. So if you're talking about this being a directive, the perception of a directive is that there's some sort of, and you help me with this, Aaron, a reprimand to the superintendent. Is that how that is a directive equivalent to a reprimand? No. Okay. All right. So then that.
So I do agree that there needs to be. Has now seen as a statement that was not my intention. That rebuttal might be the right word, either acknowledging or countering it. I do feel for optics is necessary. In terms of what you suggested, we can all in terms of press conference, and hopefully that'll be the story. It can be hereby acknowledge superintendent's desires, and as such, we are not only acknowledging, but also adding these components. That can be an approach, or the more aggressive ways are how you say, right? In terms of, okay, as a superintendent, it will also acknowledge that this can be perceived as a violation, such and such. That's very technical, but I wouldn't do it, right? So,
And then finally, N4 is what Baldwin just said, Director Baldwin just said, is that it's not the N4 from last year, it is the brand new N4. So in addition to the communication that the board wants to work on with the superintendent, you're now adopting a new policy that was recently revised. First read, second read, however soon we can get that in, and that would help with the work that has been done.
Anybody that's opposed to a written memo, Scott?
Alderman?
I hold- I went into the resolution and I took all the words out that say direct and I changed them to say request. So it's not a directive anymore. Is anybody against that? Because I think this is something that we can vote on. It's in record then. I'm not a big fan of statements or being wishy-washy. I think we should be bold. This is what I think the public needs.
But again, that's my concerns about using a resolution, using this mechanism, and us as a board, violating Rafaelo's contract. So are we okay with that? And if so, let me know what to tell the media.
And I think that everyone at this point has, this is different. This is uncharted waters for us. And
Is there? This was a great idea, the memo idea. It's still in writing, or it's still this language. In How do you all feel memo form instead of the resolution?
Is the memo public? I mean, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Get to the public meeting.
It would, so my idea is that instead of it being a resolution, so we don't get into this potential violation of contract, yada, 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 that instead of it being whereas and therefore be it resolved in resolution, it's just saying a memo from the Board of Education. We drop the whereases and we include the direct instead of request. And we write it as a letter from the board that we will publicly announce and say that this is the directives the superintendent is getting from the board, and this is the direction we're moving forward. But you have your hand on your face, so what's the issue? Alderman?
I'm okay. I'm just out of gas.
Looks like this.
Yeah.
Oh, let me tell.
Just turn.
Can you talk down? Get him on.
He's on 14.
He's in the fourth speaker? Is he here in the building?
Yeah, he's on the suite and the 14th floor.
That's where Dr. Charles went. Do you guys feel like the same thing? Or it's just- Take a pause? Yeah.
Are you still out? Can you hear us?
Can you take a pause? Can you do a pause on this?
Okay, moving to a short recess. Time is 12:56 p.m. We are back on the record, 1:15 p.m. We have learned that Scott Balderman will not be returning to this call. We also have
That physically able to, he will try to move into the call.
introduce yourself.
Dr. Richard Charles, Director of Policy Governance.
All right, we're back.
And members.
To help us expedite this just a little bit, is there any opposition to turning the resolution as currently written? Now, introduce yourself and your title.
So good, Director of Marketing and Communications, Denver Public Schools.
Is there anybody opposed to turning the resolution that is written into a memo from the board directive to the superintendent, a board directive? That's what we are doing is we will take time to take this resolution and take out all the whereases. We'll change the header, say memo from the Board of Education. Well, can somebody share it? I actually think that it's stronger to say the word direct than request. Are we cool with adding that back in, direct instead of request?
I'm good with that.
Is there anybody opposed to that?
Well, especially if it's going out in memo format, it probably should stay requests. I mean, direct is stronger. I think you're right. But if this is going out in a memo format instead of a resolution format, I think it makes more sense to read it as requests.
Is there anything against the law or anything? Okay, so we can move it with direct if we would like.
You could.
I prefer
I prefer.
to do that.
So we will.
Anything, just a reminder, we just had a conversation before that if it is a directive for the superintendent, he responds to it and it does not result in a positive experience. However, that rolls out, then it is no longer the responsibility of the superintendent and uses the tool.
Can I use as a language?
Anybody mind if I let Dr. Charles drive since he's typically,
Right.
like edit and facilitate the conversation?
Board seriously, you consider in the future some ELs so that we do eventually have some language in there, so that we're able to monitor and its progress.
So to help speed this up, Dr. Charles, let's go to the top. So we will strike everything that says whereas, and we'll just start with the sentence that is, and we'll see if that reads correctly.
Deborah, can you Memo and the logo and all of them? Yeah.
I'll continue there.
When we return to our public session, back on 7:35, do we need to vote to accept the memo, or we just read the memo into the record and we're done?
I think just a simple reading.
Okay.
Done.
Okay. Is there any desire to make this a vote? Seeing none, it'll be just read. All right, we can strike. So strike all the be there now, therefore be it resolved, and the be it for resolved. And we'll just start the sentence with the words following.
There was a request for some colleagues that wanted to read certain sections. Do you want me to just assign sections to each of you? Is that okay? So, just assign it to the ones that.
I have requested to read the one about SROs coming back.
Is this time about amendments? Like if that doesn't make it so narrow, it's. That's what I'm asking.
I don't know if I should share my concerns.
Go ahead.
Wow.
We can change.
We're gonna change that,
So
Yes, okay.
but we can't make those changes here. We have to make them in public. record.
We can make these changes because typically when the board votes on a resolution is prepared, it's ready to go.
So June 30th, 23. Are we all in favor of that? Is anybody opposed to that? Seeing no opposition, June 30th, 2020, note down where.
One thing about that, if we do it June 30 and then the board goes on break July 1.
I just meant no later than, so when I had originally thought of June 30th, that would give us our plan by whatever that is, June 18th, I don't know, but then if there are little edits or things that, let's say we all discuss it, maybe there are other things, he could send it back. Alright. What's the date that we're asking the same question? Do we expect it from him at that June board meeting?
When is that June board meeting? Is it the 20?
Do we need to get the no later than date just be there, because if he provides it in a written update on June 29th, that suffices what this is asking for. It's not asking for him to present.
June 15th is for Thursday, June 15th,
That's fine with me.
with the understanding that
And this also gives us opportunity for if the mayor decides to do something, his executive order is only binding with the time that he's in office. And so the new mayor will have to determine either to renew this, if he does do an executive order, to renew it, and or to maintain it, because by June 30th, we would have elected a new mayor. They'll be sworn in on July 1st.
Point of clarification, when a mayor or governor drafts an executive order, it needs to be renewed periodically. So maybe even monthly, which is what they did.
Put all of our signatures on the bottom.
So I'm gonna go through, for the point of us being organized as we approach this, I'm gonna go through the entire document, line by line, I'll read it out, and then if there are any edits, I think Bill is here to help. Bill, do you have access to the document? Okay. So let's go ahead and start that process. So the city of Denver has seen an increase in gun violence within our communities, which poses a threat to the safety of our schools. I'm gonna make this a little bit larger so we can all see. Per greateducation.org, Colorado ranks 45th in the percentage of taxable resources spent on education, and as a result, the expenses associated with full-time school resource officers at all high schools would undermine the district's ability to fill other needs.
Capitalize.
We sure can. Where is that?
Second paragraph.
Yeah, that's fine. Perfect, perfect, thank you. I'm not clear on what this paragraph is saying. I'll just be honest with you as we go through this document.
I think the intent there, we can't afford this on us.
Yeah.
Because we have one of the lowest funded.
Done. Okay. So funding for SROs is not adequate for all schools, not capitalized district, please, throughout. Bill, capitalized district throughout the document. Okay. You understand it? You got it?
Any questions, concerns? Let's keep going.
My only suggestion would be that
see that, does that reinforce that we're doing this?
this should immediately come.
The directives.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I'm just gonna take a note of it, and Bill, you'll put a comment in there for that. And then the other thing I wanted to make sure that we address, I think we need to be more specific about district's ability to fill other needs. I think that's too vague. What are we talking about? Financial obligations? You talking about what? This is your document, board members.
I think it's
Basic academic needs.
Yeah, it's
basic academic, basic operational needs,
You think academic and operation?
academic. Anybody opposed to that? Seeing none, move forward. Academic, comma, social, emotional, and operational. Anybody opposed to that?
No,
Okay, Phil, we dropped basic.
Yeah.
So to fill academic, social, emotional, and operational needs. Is anybody opposed to that?
no.
Seeing none, moving.
Because this is the way this is what I'm thinking, is if we're moving this before, what is that, before our request to the mayor, we're laying out. This is why we need you to partner and fund us.
Okay.
And then instead of
Being able to
fill,
make-
oh, sorry, I like adequately. So to, how about adequately address? great alliteration. I'm afraid, I didn't really address ability.
Board of Education, oh, sorry, are you a reader?
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and read it as is. Per greateducational.org, Colorado ranks 45th in the percentage of taxable resources spent on education, and as a result, the expenses associated with full-time school resource officers at all high schools would undermine the district's ability to adequately address academic, social, emotional, and operational needs.
And
Yeah, Bill will do that piece.
Bill's gonna do that piece, so moving on to the next one. So next paragraph, the Board of Education unanimously approved Safety Ends Policy 4 on February 23rd, 2023, and our ends policies are the long-term priorities for the superintendent. Ends Policy 4 states schools and classrooms will be welcoming and inclusive learning environments. In the event of an emergency, students and faculty will be prepared, and parents, families, and guardians will receive accurate and timely information. In light of the increase in gun violence in our communities, which poses a threat to the safety of our schools, the district will collaborate with law enforcement, local law enforcement, community partners, advocacy organizations, and school communities to proactively mitigate internal and external threats to safety. Yes.
On February 20th.
Yep. Got it. Okay, thank you. No,
but
just on the front.
this style with the-
Yep.
you have quote that's that long.
Yep.
No, we, yeah, we're gonna block it. Yeah. Let's do. Remove the quotation marks,
Sorry.
he's working on it.
Okay.
turn that into a block quote, and then import policy 4 colon. States colon. Right.
Any other word Olympics?
No.
And then, but this needs to be half-inch margin on both sides.
Yep.
You went to school.
Have fully justified.
I'm gonna go ahead. Yeah, can you do that, Bill?
Reading, Dr. Frank.
All right, still moving on. Next paragraph, the Board of Education unanimously approved the proclamation regarding gun violence prevention on December 15th, 2022.
Same thing. Date moves to the beginning of the sentence. And then we're gonna, I don't know if we want to pull anything from that.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be problematic in terms, yeah, I'll let you do it, Bill. I'm not gonna touch anymore. Yeah. On December.
So if we're not gonna quote anything from this, we probably want a transition, like in
Yeah.
addition, December.
Perfect. Content is not going to change there any further. Any other comments about that one before we move on? Okay. Next paragraph, the Board of Education unanimously approved the same thing here. Move the date to the front. Executive Limitation Policy 1010 on November 18th. We're going to pull everything in one paragraph at some point. Okay, nothing there that we need to change, right? We're gonna put some language around it. We'll come back. Just pull everything into one paragraph. Continuing, which states the superintendent will not staff schools with school resource officers or the consistent presence of security armed with guns or any other law enforcement personnel. Okay, next. Based on the emergency situation due to the events of March 22nd, 2023, the Board of Education will hereby suspend Board Policy EL 10.10 through June 30th, 2023. And direct Superintendent Dr. Alex Marrero to develop a systemic, long-term safety operational plan to address the root cause of gun violence in accordance with Safety Ends Policy 4, and further directs the superintendent to present the systemic, long-term safety operational plan and his reasonable interpretations to the Board of Education no later than June 30th, 2023. I have a number of questions in there. I know there's probably comments. Yes.
I don't think we any longer need one safety out there. The second, to address the root cause.
Is it a comment tied to that second one, incorporating what we learned from the DPS community and from the year-long process when SROs were removed?
Because so many times we do things. Year-long process. I'm sure you'll be acknowledging the community. We've already heard. Yes.
So how do you want this to be reflected? Do you want this language in the comment to be now reflected in here?
I'd like to see that in there and then a link to the website because it's getting lost. Like the students shared with Michelle, they thought it was like we passed it and then it happened. It was actually the year-long process. We gathered a lot of students. It was a phase out. It wasn't immediate, but I think that gets lost. So if we could say that we're going to look and what we heard so much from the community. What did we learn from the DPS community and from that year-long process? And then link the website so people are reminded of that. I'm not saying it was perfect, but it is learning.
We're phased out, not removed,
Thank you.
because they did not just, you know,
That's a good.
phase them out because we heard school leaders express that they needed a phase out. And the city.
We'll link the website.
If you got rid of it, you got it, okay. I see.
No, the link.
We just gotta take out that stuff between the hyperlink, and y'all can do all the gymnastics around the word Olympics about the hyperlink. Where did that go?
Yeah, let me just say this as well. So in this paragraph here, it's saying that, yes, we see a raising of gun violence incidents in schools since this whole 2020 situation. And we also have that whole issue of a year-long process collecting data around SROs in schools. And so we need some sort of connection back to the rest of this document, right? So what is it that we are wanting to say ultimately? What are people walking away with from this paragraph? So it's up to Dr. Marrero. Right, so Dr. Marrero is going to use the year-long community engagement process that resulted in the phase out of SROs as a part of his planning is what you're expecting him to do? Is that what I'm trying to get to?
To build on that, but there's so many other things. It's going to create a systemic long-term safety operational plan in accordance with N4. But he's going to go back and look at what we've learned and build.
Okay,
And we took away the due date. We have the June, yes, reference June. We also need to be specific that we expect it by the end of June. Correct. What was the language, Michelle, that?
so who's taking that? Is that you, Bill?
Yeah, and then if we could, I don't know if you think about it, instead of to presented by,
Yeah, hold on one second. Due to instead of,
first sentence, versus the situation presented by the.
okay,
Then do we use that long-term safety operational plan throughout.
We should probably capitalize long-term safety operational plan as well, should we not?
Yeah. Find it, find a shorter phrase that, or just the plan, quote, parentheses. I would say open parentheses, quote, plan, and quote, close parentheses.
That's fine.
A couple of questions. Address the root cause of gun violence. I can do the root cause analysis. Beyond.
Yeah, and to add to that point, the root cause, there are all sorts of national reports by research organizations, so.
I don't think what we're asking to do is address the root cause of the gun violence. I don't think we need to say that. I think that plays into the narrative that somehow the schools can fix everything that's going on. To address the realities of
Buys and considers.
You're not so we are not listening to anything about the root causes of gun violence.
Is there anybody opposed to removing this sentence?
Yeah, I was just thinking, operational plan on this data for split.
Anybody, are you opposed to doing it? Anybody opposed? I'm just trying to speed us up.
Opposed to removing it,
Opposed to removing the to address root cause of gun
that
violence.
phrase,
All right, take
phrase, no.
that phrase, just, yeah, strike that. In accordance with safety is policy 4. Further, the board directs superintendent to build upon the lessons learned from the DPS community, and from the year-long community engagement process, which originally resulted in the adoption of EL 1010. Are we good?
No, we're still not saying that we expect him to present it to us in June.
Then we need we just need to add a sentence. This plan shall be provided to the board no later than June 30th, 2023.
Capital P on plan.
P on plan.
Does the board feel it's necessary to share some of the learnings? So what I've heard from leaders, clearly there was a process, but I've heard there wasn't a process. Just and that there wasn't a plan. I think it's necessary for all to share that. If it's beneficial for the audience. It's not for me, it's very clear, it's for the audience. So that it's
The purpose.
lessons learned. So clearly there was a process, right? But I've heard that there wasn't. That addresses that there was a process. Then the second complaint was there was never a plan. Just did it. They beat the board.
Say that when we did get no transition, and was that year-long process that Alderman, the rest of the board at the time we implemented, because there wasn't like this notion that there was just this yank out and cops were gone. That's just not true. Like it exists.
That's what I mean by learning. I mean, it's like that's a lesson that would be learned from that. I didn't want to call it out that specifically, but it wasn't as clear as evidenced by what Michelle heard from the girls, right? Like it wasn't clear. Like not everybody knew that. I think Sochi and I saw that in the community. But I mean, I don't know if we need to say that specifically.
And so I
think that's a statement that we made.
I don't think it's necessary, and I think that the year-long process, that there were from board
Send it back.
resolution. Yep. I think that Dr. Arless part of the where did those dollars go to the resource center? Does that make sense?
Like, unless you're, in my opinion, this can't be a shitting on the SRO resolution, especially because this is very clear that after June 30th, the BL 1010 will go back into effect. So.
So let me just say
But
this.
so if we come out and, especially because we also haven't heard, aside from reactionary feedback, actual true constructive criticism of the policy. We've only heard folks in times of dire distress, like now, for everybody to be like, we want cops. All right, well, tell us what was wrong with the withdrawal. Tell us how this SRO would have prevented X, Y, and Z. We have not articulated what the could have been.
Dr. Murrow, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to take the liberty to just make a statement here. As a former administrator within a building and listening to some of the calls that we've been sitting on, this statement is going to blow up the leaders in this district. This particular one about up until the June 30th, 2023. Our leaders are in crisis.
We're not doing it long term.
I'm just telling you, our leaders, whatever you all decide is fine. I'm just making an observation because what will happen is probably a walkout and host of other things that will happen. And there's going to be some cause there. I'm just letting you know.
So, go ahead.
Then what we're doing is we're saying June 30th. By putting in June 30th and trying to organize the words in my head, we are requesting a comprehensive plan, which the community has communicated to us that they didn't see, know about, or they believe that there was no plan. So even if we're removing SROs, according to this, we are asking for a plan as to how we move forward. And that was the feedback that I received, is there needs to be a plan. Doesn't matter what we do.
Right, and it's, yeah.
So she brought up earlier, one of the, that she had. Was explicit nod to community engagement. We have not yet put that in there.
That's,
I think that if we call out in a list of who we're engaging the community with, school leaders, right, without getting into it. Needs to be determined part of that. And I think if we can say
revisiting at some later date the results of such a plan, because if there's going to be community engagement, you see what I'm saying? Because otherwise, if you don't do something there, principals will walk out. Yeah, okay. So
And I also don't want us to be held hostage to a group saying they're gonna walk out. This needs to be about children. And so the threats of a walkout, like, I'm not entertaining that in this conversation because we need to be centered on kids. So if they want to, principals aren't gonna get up and leave their buildings. Actually, it's actually against their DSLA contract for principals to strike. So the principals have no right to walk out.
regardless of what the situation is and what your philosophies are, I'm just saying, I'm just stating to you all, there is an issue of safety and what I heard,
Yep.
so that you're best informed in making your decision. So how would you like me to capture that?
That for the DSLA contract, in the school association, they cannot strike. So that threat,
ask an answer.
that threat is not a real threat. So are you ready to move forward?
How should we capture this? What I just,
Here's a memo. We don't.
For more consideration, being accomplished, I don't know. Do we state What, us? It is like you? So they were in June 30th before duration. What, by?
Later, for,
Give me your.
okay, this plan shall be provided by the, to the board no later than June 30th, 2023. And the Board of Education will, vote, on the plan in the August Board of Education meeting, or whenever when is it, when's the date? So it could be a definitive date.
September 17th.
Yeah, we should do it in August, y'all, because
Okay.
that's still a month of school those are 2 weeks of school still, and they need to have clarity what we're doing. And it should actually, we should call a special meeting of the board to do this prior to the school year commencing.
That's not on the parents or.
Procedure, is the board planning on having a special meeting tomorrow? Because if so, we need to start working on an agenda and get it posted.
Can do it the afternoon.
We don't have a 3 o'clock. Brother gonna be at North, and I'm assuming that's gonna be canceled, the school being closed.
So we're doing it during the day.
Why do you feel like,
That's where my, yeah, me too.
I just know there was a discussion about it.
And we did this.
So,
Make a decision to come to the Thursday. Thursday is the day where everybody's. Where Wednesday after spring break, usually a week for. Oh, no, yeah, you're right. No. And I teach on Thursday.
Friday, December.
So for right now, so.
So, no meeting tomorrow, okay.
All right, so as it stands right now, based on the emergency situation presented by the events of March 22nd, 2023, the Board of Education will hereby suspend board policy EL 10.10 through June 30th, 2023, and direct Superintendent Dr. Alex Marrera to develop a systemic long-term safety operational plan in accordance with Safety Ends Policy 4. Further, the board directs the superintendent to engage in thorough community engagement with communities, including this communities seems redundant, including students, teachers, parents, families, school leaders, and others, and build upon the lessons learned from the DPS community and from the year-long community engagement process, which originally resulted in the adoption of EL 10.10. This plan shall be provided to the board no later than June 30th and will be voted upon prior to the start of the 2023-24 school year.
You all to collaborate in that process, that community engagement process. is important. We should. Collaboration with
In
the
collaboration
board.
with the board.
So
Directs the community.
if you're directing the superintendent and then taking part in that, that seems a little weird.
And through community engagement, with students, family, and other leaders in collaboration and others in collaboration with the Board of Education. Is that?
No. Oh, sorry.
So we can,
I'm confused. Is the year-long community engagement process tied to 10.10 or is it tied to the SRO resolution? Okay, I feel like, because I think we can add some additional clarity about the SRO resolution and EL 10.10. EL 10.10,
I think we're gonna. It's right. It's with a SRO resolution. But if it comes to the adoption of the SRO resolution, that's codified in EL 10, like that I think is just not good. But let me ask something about community engagement quickly while I have the floor. Given that we are providing this as a memo to the superintendent, are we comfortable with the superintendent determining the board's role in that community engagement?
That's what I think we said.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Why don't you follow us down with that? It's a direction. You don't have to have it in memo form. Explain what you all would do. Thank you for a plan. To inform.
Well, so it could be,
And it wasn't like- that's the legit question.
it could be a, li-
Why would we write this and we would need that-
you already have it in GP 15 in your policy. So I guess what we're saying is that you all are doing your community engagement, gathering information in the ways that you all determine. And then we're just, you're still directing the superintendent to do that work. And that's going to be part of your deliberative process. Once
We
you
don't have a systemic. All each.
you do, it's in,
No, but I mean, we do it in policy, but not in our.
In practice.
that's the question.
So the concern there is the training sources, because the process that for the community engagement will require staff to support. So that's why I think that this should be in some way, this has to be a collaborative effort in some way, and it speaks to us working together.
The phrase in collaboration with the board. That leaves that open.
I think that if we say in collaboration with the board here, it's shifting us back into operational.
This is very operational. Like this entire directive is very operational.
Where would you have?
That's good. That's the most appropriate place.
Where are you suggesting?
As we were talking about suspending policy, this conversation doesn't need to be public.
I think what we'll have to do is present this memo and then vote. We'll have to vote to suspend the policy, so.
Okay, any other comments, or questions about this particular paragraph before we move on?
Yes, if we're gonna vote on it, oh, sorry. We're gonna vote on it at the start. Your principals come back, the universals. I can't see us coming together to vote on this. Can we say prior to that, I don't know,
First is,
prior to August 19th? I don't know, I just, like, July needs to be sacred, or we're all gonna lose out.
I think this is very clear that this is not starting until kids, I mean, this way I read it, it's
Right, start.
academic.
Thank you.
Can I just also add that we have an EL policy, EL 11, that's specific to school safety, and the fact that it's not implicated in here is concerning.
Well, there are a lot of things that are happening.
Well, I'm saying I can't see Dr. Marrero develop a plan that doesn't include EL 11.
We're not saying that you can't use anything that's like.
Okay, so this is where the executive limitation versus this, right? Executive limitation, he can still do a whole bunch of other stuff versus you are being directed to do this.
So
If he doesn't do one of these things, it's good. If he goes above and beyond, that's great. But you're directing him to do this.
what you said earlier, us doing this memo, that we cannot hold him accountable to it, So then putting in. Doing. I don't know.
You see what I'm saying?
That we're working on which if we're all clear, he cannot be held accountable regarding evaluation. Period.
Right.
Full stop. We have an EL 11, which addresses some of this.
Okay.
Which is accountable. You are,
Correct.
right? Those exist separately within the same ecosystem. I'm not sure that I'm clear why those can't exist separately. And okay.
You see what I'm saying?
I
Yeah.
see what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Director Adjournment. After the first sentence, say EL 11 will remain in place or something. to
Oh,
that
but
effect.
even in that situation, so we'll be back to where we have policies that are conflicting with each other, and we don't want that to happen, because then he's both going to be, he won't be held accountable to this stuff, but he still has to follow EL 11, which may be in violation of the plan that he's doing. I mean, it just,
There you go, in consideration.
right.
That
Which
works.
acknowledges
Yeah.
us as a board that if there are conflicts,
yeah,
he will have some reasonable interpretation in terms of primacy. He will be able to explain to us
here's a conflict.
why he went in which direction. Here's a
Perfect.
And ideally, while he's presenting to us in June, between now and then, ideally, we'd be able to have that conversation.
Agreed.
Yes.
You all agree? Okay, moving on. Thank you, Director Estes.
Keep going, keep going.
This one again.
Yeah. So,
Wait.
Oh. Oh.
Superintendent Alex Murray, work collaboratively with Mayor Michael Hancock and other elected officials to externally fund 2 school resource officers and 2 additional health professionals. Social workers, psychologists, and therapists, probably should put in therapist comment, etc. And at all high schools, including charters for the remainder of the 22-23 school year.
Mention.
Should be, so the issue with this is the notion from the other side of this thing. Thing too, is that don't have SROs in schools. So this appeases those who want SROs and those who don't have SROs. So it's not cops or counselors, it's cops and counselors. We're giving you both of them. We're asking the mayor to fund these 2 positions or these 4 positions, period.
I was getting ready to say,
But not
is
for everybody
Yeah.
else. Across the board, period.
You don't want to do that.
They don't have. But to figure out.
It's
No.
also.
That's correct.
Maybe you just say up to 2.
It is consistent in the sense that it's 2,500 students at East and like 1,200 at GW.
Speaking of which, we should also talk about taking 1,000 kids out of East for safety.
okay. So,
We should put it in here.
Let's do one conversation at a time. Let's go ahead. Director Quattlebaum.
and yes, it should be and for, and therapists. I like therapists, I like clinicians, but therapists first, because everybody understands.
Yeah.
But, to show that we are being intentional in what we're doing, and I would like to add, to include, but not limited to, talk therapy, group therapy, family therapy, art therapy.
Yeah.
Me personally, it can go after, yeah. Talk therapy, Yeah, thank you. Therapy, group therapy, family therapy, art therapy.
So you're saying as a directive, it must include these at a minimum is what you're requesting, okay? So,
And so that is guidelines to what school, because the school may say we don't need individual clinicians, we have a greater need. We need to be able to do this in group work. And that'll guide which one of those that they're gonna want in the school. They may want a social worker, they may want a psychologist, or they may want a clinician or therapist. And that leaves it up to the school as to who they.
and then all budget implications for any of this stuff that we're talking about in the entire document is gonna be left up to Dr. Oh, yeah, Mayor.
Just one consideration here, that we just had, Denver Police Department just got $1 million grant. Yeah, so that million, it takes $1 million to put 2 mental health professionals in 6 high schools.
He's going to have to figure this out. If the executive order and push some natural, or push some.
Yeah, what if, yeah, that's the next question.
It's and there's some other pieces there, but I mean, I guess my call out is that this is a tall funding order.
We can, folks, that we can't be, the mayor's asking on us to reinstate SROs, he better figure it out. With the Denver police are not under the jurisdiction of Denver Public Schools whatsoever. And so it is up to the city of Denver, if they're going to make very public requests of us, we are responding and saying, great, figure it out. We direct the superintendent, our employee, to work with you to figure this piece out. Up to, we still need to fix that language because I mean, as many as 2, or does that still include up to? As many as 2, is that the language that we're good with? Okay, cool. And I think as many as 2 additional mental health professionals, just so that that's consistent. But this is, the mayor's publicly called the school board out. He has said that we have made a reckless decision and we need to reverse it. We are reversing our decision. He needs to figure it out. That is the mayor's issue. We don't, unless he wants to give Denver police to us. You want to do chief? June. That's why the whole thing is contingent on June. I think he will. I think he'll find the resources.
All right, moving on.
I have a question here, Brian. You got a question?
Yeah, so we can offer, but not force.
Okay. So Mike. Charters, I would love to mandate that, but my assumption is we're limited by existing contractual language. So our charter, anything that's not already in the
Charter requirements currently say that we offer safety and security services, but we cannot force them to take it. So in a similar vein with the SROs, we can offer them the opportunity to have SROs, but we cannot force them to take them.
I'm very honest, if you look and reflect on our work, every major charter organization were the first, charters were the first groups of schools to say, we're good, we don't want SROs. And they signaled to DPS, do not send them back, we don't want them, and they actually ended their contracts, I believe, earlier than what the district's rollout was.
So he's just insert interested or something like that here, but all.
right. I think you could. He's. Yeah.
Well, what- What if we said to offer and externally fund?
Where?
Under. So it would be, Dr. Alex Moreau to work collaboratively with Mayor Michael Hancock and other elected officials to offer an externally funded. I mean,
Yeah.
they Then it's about the offer.
It's just.
All right. So with that caveat, that this is really about the offer, right? Does that fix it? Because I don't want to leave a return department.
So we should take offer and out and put it in excluding charters, right?
Our therapy, I don't like to, for the remainder.
Okay, so drop,
No charter line.
yeah, and yeah. We need to offer and externally, the entities be externally funded. Back to what it originally was. So we can.
Why would you drop offer?
We also have two schools who have indicated that they are leaning no. They
Yeah.
said that they didn't say no, they said we want to have. Yeah, so that's Compassion Road and GSA. So we want to give them the offer, but not all schools are gonna want this.
See, and that's.
Maybe.
Because we didn't give schools the opportunity to pick and choose if they wanted SRO or not in the first place. So giving them this out, and let's say for some reason we go a different direction in June. Now they're gonna say, well, you gave us the choice then, why is it not the choice now? So now the expectation will be always on the table. There will be a choice period. It should be, every high school is gonna have this period.
Well, I think the offer, like, one, it promotes school autonomy, right? So that's an important consideration. Two, it gets the pressure off the board and the superintendent if we make the offer and it's at the school level that they decide that they don't want this support.
Which
And
is where they're not.
I will down here. We can go to the next paragraph because we've now been debating this for 45 minutes.
Is that they want. They just be able to decide.
So I'm gonna put in your minds 2:30 as the target for us to be completed with this. I think we're close. Yeah. So next paragraph, the Board of Education hereby directs Superintendent Dr. Alex Moreira to ensure every SRO is appropriately trained in the use of firearms, de-escalation techniques, policing in a school environment, and knowledgeable of the school community they intend to serve. Anything else there? The only question I would have. So let me just say this.
comment.
So the original requirements of an SRO didn't work previously.
I know.
Right, so what I'm suggesting, yeah,
So we go knowledgeable of the school community, comma, skilled in community policing.
yeah, you want to do that, skilled in community policing? Or do you want to say is keenly aware of the issues regarding community policing or something to that effect?
Is this
So
for
change the-
end of the school year or to be in?
That's what goes back. This is.
Or
Our
so
expectation.
moving
But this year we
forward,
don't have
this is for
SROs.
the end of the school year.
No, we have temporary police in the building.
SRO, I don't know which refer to. They said that have signs. SRO speaks to, yes, yeah, but also the funding mechanism. It's very specific language. And although I agree that that's, I don't know if I can guarantee that that's gonna happen. In particular, community, skilled in community policing. I'll make every intent, but to deliver every single one.
This can't be held against you, right?
Right, aside from that,
But you want to
right,
try.
it's, you can put in there, what's gonna say next? Yeah, and then what's.
Yeah.
Right, someone. Handcuffs is good.
So do we say that you need to collaborate with the chief of police? Like, because I'm not willing to kind of knee on this one because this needs to, clearly school resource officers, temporary police in schools did not work before. And if we are not very clear with our expectation, again, this has to be read to where we're reintroducing cops, but we're also being very clear, like, this is our expectation with cops coming back to schools.
Yeah. What do you want to change to?
But they've already been called SROs publicly, so why are we using it?
We have to say what the thing is, and if there are contractual and budgetary implications by using SROs, we can't. use
Got it changed.
So I hear you. I agree with the practical element here.
Let's be in the Zoom. Oh,
Yeah.
Where if what you're saying is suspended. Yeah.
Like that.
This to me is a consideration of if we end up as part of Dr. Murrow's long-term plan. This is our expectation, but to expect it between now and the end of spring break is an impossibility. So to put that out there in the public, if and when something happens with one of these armed officers in the school, we've said this, somebody in the school says, did this happen? We say, no, because it couldn't. We couldn't train them on community policing in the last 2 weeks. I think this consideration is essential for that long-term plan. I'm concerned about.
We should just drop the superintendent, direct superintendent, say the board requests.
Police
Different police department, these sorts of things, and then it takes off the superintendent, but that I'm not willing to waive, like personally, I'm not willing to waive on the rest of that.
You got it, Bill. Claire Davis Act coming into play here. Just wondering what the implications are with regard to, I mean, certainly this situation, but the situation that we just experienced. Could the Claire Davis Act open the door to board members, Dr. Marrero?
Yeah, it could. I don't think we're there yet based on the incident that happened at East.
So I want to be clear that I'm not taking responsibility, that the board is not taking responsibility. That if these things aren't in place with the armed police officers, then it's on us.
Right, so we can't, to Dr. Moore's point, to Esme's point, this is not something that we can as a district ensure. It is only something that we can request of the DPD. So we're not on the hook.
So yes, I understand that. As we discuss above or somewhere in there, that there's certain language that we should not use in regards to superintendent carrying these things out because of the interpretation of the public, thinking that this is an expectation. I don't want it to be an expectation that we are going to be in communication with the Denver Police Department to ensure that these things happen for the last 3 months. See what I'm saying?
So we can put together a memo or a letter that memorializes this request. We can publish that on our website, and that's our obligation. No, it can, but I think to Michelle's point, yeah, I think I hope I'm summarizing this quickly, is that, so how do we let the public know that we fulfilled our obligation under this paragraph? And the way that we fulfill our paragraph is to actually, or fulfill our obligation is to make the request. And I think that there's a way that we can do that in a strongly worded letter that is an open letter to the Denver Police Department from Denver Public Schools, requesting a certain caliber of officer that they provide to us for this purpose.
I think that would be.
So is it the Denver, the board of, should,
Would be the Board of Education.
class? Bill? So then that's an action item for us to do? Which supports that.
We say we'll request prior to the end of spring break. Because then I feel like.
I don't want to put,
I don't think we should.
I don't want to put a commitment on there, but
His recommendation, I think is strong the way it is. I agree with everyone. A lot of that is part of the Pierce program that should be aware. I know that you guys access will plan a robust version. That is a statement to be said, I feel, public. But before then, I urge the board to reach out to Chief Thomas saying, I don't want him to find out via the press.
We're gonna do this today.
The press release,
When you feel like you need to call him this time.
that's right. You all will have to, Dr. Sochi, to call. All right, let's keep moving. Are we good? Are we good? Okay, next paragraph.
no, I mean, we can make the request, but I think the liability piece was more around us making that commitment. The board army.
Need to put a sentence that just says the Board of Education, that the Denver Public Schools and the Board of Education is not liable if the Denver Police.
You don't want to do that at all.
They talk about liability.
Well, so the only reason I raised that was because of the Claire Davis Act being very explicit.
Let's pull the Claire Davis Act out. And is there a place where we talk about our obligation as a district to?
Should be up top, right?
Safe and welcoming.
You ponder on that. Can we finish the last 4 sentences? Because we're now on reaching the hour.
Okay.
So Aaron will ponder on where the Claire Davis Act will go to while we finish the last 4 sentences of this.
All right, so next, the Board of Education hereby directs Superintendent Dr. Alex Marrero to report to the board on a monthly basis disaggregated data concerning on-campus ticketing and arrests to ensure armed officers are only there for safety purposes. Any questions, comments about that particular paragraph? In 4.
Doesn't specifically say whether it's where the officers are placed, but makes
Okay. Anything else there? So we're going to have to collapse some of these paragraphs again. The Board of Education hereby directs Superintendent Dr. Alex Marrero to ensure teachers and principals are not using SROs for discipline issues that arise on campus or in classrooms.
We use armed what?
Armed police officers, armed police officers. Perfect. Any other comments about that paragraph? We're almost done, folks. Okay. Board of Education hereby directs Superintendent Dr. Alex Marrero to ensure student safety plans and behavioral intervention plans are implemented by trained professionals.
Yeah. Yeah. And that the expectation would be, if I'm reading this, that a trained professional means the police should be the one doing that sort of plan. We need to strike that because that wouldn't have been the case in this circumstance anyways.
I don't know that it needs to be said here, but they're given the information that was shared yesterday. There have been significant questions raised about this. There is a lot of speculation, including from members of our security team, that an SRO would have been doing this, or a police officer would be, right? And I know we can't address that here, and I agree it needs to be cut. And at some point, somebody needs to be able to address that, because it is the place where Chief Thomas threw the board under the bus, saying that it was board policy that the deans were in there.
So let me, yeah, Deborah.
Those are not, those don't necessarily have to be included in a safety plan. But that's what we're going to do in this particular case. Those are tools that we use. They are implemented in this tool by. And be careful when you do that.
You see me?
Yes.
We,
That's what they are.
One of the most,
We can clarify what they are.
one of the most important things that Deborah and I were in a conversation earlier this morning that needs clarification is the students have to agree to be a part of these plans for a search. If they refuse, they go home for the day, right? But they could still have a weapon on premises. The only person who would be able to do anything further would be a police officer, because they are legally allowed to do that.
And it's important to note that police officers can only perform this sort of search upon having probable cause. Our staff are permitted to do this because we have the caretaker exception, and we act as caretakers for the whole school system. Our ability to search a student is much, much more lenient than the standard that a police officer has to follow.
Opened up Pandora's box.
Misinformation.
Being
Correct.
created and expanded on by media, and people don't understand all of these things, is that this is a board policy that applies that. A lot of hysteria, can answer it here, and
The answer just how we said it. Because the officers can't, because that would be a search. This is part of a behavior plan that the students need to be
Consent.
on board with, and that falls with the caretaker exemption.
is anyone opposed to cutting?
I think it needs to be cut. And I also wouldn't want to cast doubt on the dean.
Is anyone opposed to cutting this sentence? Let's strike it. Okay, next, the Board of Education shall discuss amendments to Board Policy EL 10.10 at the board meeting following the presentation of the superintendent's long-term operational capitalized ed please plan for safety and policy 4 in alignment with EL 11 as well, right? So we've got to make sure. Yeah.
Or just what that at the end?
Probably.
Because this will take a long time to discuss. So you have to give it the attention that it deserves. And we're probably, I don't know. What's your last name spelled correct?
Should be Lindsay.
Hey.
Okay, any other comments about the document? I think we,
Sure, all of those things.
The only remaining SRO is
Yeah. SRO and classroom. Okay, so you do need to have an organized way in which you're going to deliver this upstairs. What pieces will, okay, so let me say that again. We need an organized way to go up for this press conference. Who's gonna speak when, all of that stuff. Oh, yes, that's right.
I would suggest go in during the meeting. When you read this statement, that's going to give the press lots to talk about. Then take a break, gather yourselves, take a break, get something to eat, water, whatever. And then we set the press conference for half an hour after the conclusion of the board.
So could we do this real quick? Could somebody go and alert the press 15 minutes in the 7:35? So if we want to go ahead and get them ready, we'll do this part. We should vote. We need to vote on this, right? Because we're repealing policy.
So we need someone to move, so.
Let me get Melissa.
Oh,
Right, send a memo. Going to vote, and we need a language around making a motion to rescind 10.10. Or suspend, I'm sorry, language around suspending 10.10. Give us a few minutes to share some thoughts. Go around the table, share some thoughts. We'll call Chief Thomas, as you're creating the language, we'll call Chief Thomas. After we vote,
Why don't you talk to them before we go early? So that he knows that this is coming in 5 minutes. We don't want him caught off guard.
did we keep turns reading parts of this?
Well, I want to,
Wants to, so only the three of us want to, so we'll break it up into three. You, VP, and myself.
there would be without.
Melissa's already on the 7th floor. I'm gonna see if she can allow me to do that. We're gonna look at the resolution or not resolution.
Yeah.
So I will speak on behalf of the board.
this right.
However, with VP action support, he and I will share reading this out to the.
Three of us will read it.
One thing that I'm not.
So do you want to read it at the press conference?
I'm just telling you, I'm not gonna get robbed, so.
I'm hoping that we all would stand together in solidarity as he and I are reading the statement.
We're not even ready. Everybody at the meeting. We're done.
Okay. Read it.
I don't like that.
Don't like what?
Solidarity with all.
You put your words into it. I did not say I do not want to stand in solidarity. I said I did not want to stand as.
What would you?
So if there's a question that is better answered by Dr. Olson, a leader will step aside and allow Dr. Olson to take that question. If there's a question that is better answered by Director Esterman, leader will step aside and say, Director Esterman, this is a question you're more prepared, or however you say it. That is what I.
Governments, the president
In all of this
speaks on behalf of the board.
But I'm the window in policy government, already had that conversation. That's been debated, and we've agreed upon that this is a different situation.
I understand their points, but I think that will also show solidarity. And we're getting vice president. I do anticipate the right question to do, and I think that offers a lot. Okay. It's just her. You would, I think, you are going to get some direct questions, and I don't think that you should answer, right? There could be some really tough questions and inappropriate questions. So, instead of just shielding him, perhaps it's very formal. So that's why I feel like one voice. Now, you all can decide who that person is, but I am concerned about questions that you may.
I
The regular-
actually, this instance, that voice that she's representing should the voice that's part of the original policy. And the only one here that we able to. But, we're trying to shield him from the question.
Look, y'all, I actually appreciate the gesture of shielding me for questions. However, where I can provide insight, I definitely need to not be absent of my voice, because people are going to still reach out to me via directly and/or they're gonna wait and try to, like, I already got, again, I now have MSNBC that wants to do an interview tonight. Like, I haven't responded to anything because of all of this, but I believe that is applicable. But I'm also not gonna, the blood is on your hands, not answering.
I still believe that this would be a good time. About the whole thing, the one to be stated. Understand or not? That was not what you said. I want to read this.
Reading it at the
So we're
board
gonna
meeting.
read it at the board meeting.
Question one, when I said I do not want to prompt, you said, question to me, well, do you want to read this at the press conference? That is why I said Dr. Olson should be the one to read it at the press conference. That came from the question that was asked. So I didn't pull it out. Board meeting, redundant, that questions for the. Well, it's now. Yes, the report.
And I have another question. I too have been contacted by the community, and I'm not, are we agreeing not to speak about this outside of here? So like, we're not gonna give separate interviews, or do we want to say that? I don't want to, like, if you want to, I don't know. But I'm trying to create less, excuse me, division in our city by not, like, not having us give one-off interviews. I imagine we might be asked by the Spanish media to speak. If you want me to help you speak to the Spanish media, I'm more than happy to do that. But like, as far as a separate interview, no, but I just want to be sure we're clear, because we're all being, if anyone goes and reached out to me, I'm ignoring it all. Or do we want to just say we all do what we want? I just want to know. I'm not trying to control. It has to be all or nothing. And this is forgiving statement that was made to the press. And that is 7 of us to agree. Yes. And it's something.
That include Brother Joe.
Yeah, I feel that. Just can't.
No, to know it's.
I don't anticipate her to want to, but I'm not also gonna be compelled,
And that's fine. I just. I need to know
especially with all of the narrative about me.
different situation, but if you think it was on Jeremy.
Going downstairs on this memo to read the memo out publicly.
Reopen the meeting with a motion to read the memo out publicly.
Yeah, that's actually. That's the only thing we need to vote on. Yeah.
Right. Early suspend 10.10 until June 30th.
So- We can't do that. It's within it. Okay,
So we just could do it.
Yeah.
all in one.
I think that's right. I'm smart.
Then break for a little bit, and then we'll have a press conference. At that time, the folks that will lead the questions will be President Gaetan and Superintendent Moreno. But if there is somebody, is there anybody that's oppositional to, there's another board member that is best suited to answer that, for that board member to, because I think that would address Michelle's concern of like, if there's another board member that we best believe can answer that question, we're allowing that space if that board member, but we're not going to be like, Deontay, what do you have to say? We're allowing that space so nobody's getting offended, right?
I anticipate you and I.
That's what I was, yep, and so if that's a door we're opening, like, I want to be sure I have time.
And to have board members there, not standing up there, because again, we can create an opportunity. If somebody's not comfortable answering the question to, for example, they say, Director Anderson, do you think you have blood on your hands? And then he says, I don't want to answer that, or I'm not going to answer that, or whatever. That's a very bad look in the press conference. If the other board members are present, standing back, and it's just Dr. Marrero, President Gaetan at the front, it becomes much more controlled environment.
But I don't agree with that, because it also dilutes that we need, the city needs the image of all of us standing together for the rest of this afternoon. In my opinion, they need to see the board as a united front with the superintendent, because we don't know what parts they're going to pick and choose. They could say, we're not running any of the board meeting that happened. We're only running the press conference.
They will all be.
I just agree if we're speaking on behalf of the board as representation of the board with the superintendent, that's who needs to be at the podium.
Who needs to be
If
at the
we're
podium?
following policy government,
Who needs to be at the podium?
these two.
Strongly.
I'm just saying, if we're doing policy government,
We're
That's
set up
what it is.
upstairs. Because it's a better forum. But what's stopping us, since they're already, are they in both locations?
They moved down to 735 and then.
Why can't you fit around the day, get a little bit closer and do it a more, wants to take it very informal, and we'll be sitting. It's not the normal press conference, it's actually a little bit more comfortable to be in our conference.
The room?
That's not a controlled press conference.
I don't, like,
Any
we haven't created.
Well, I think that we're board leadership, the president and I, and the superintendent should be the one. I'll stand back. And we can move forward in that nature.
Meaning he will stand with me, he will be answering. Will be answering questions, but he will be at the podium sitting.
Okay.
But as long as the two, as long as
I'm not prepared.
Yeah, we need to take a moment to prepare these motions, to prepare the motion. Can we say 3 o'clock? It's 20 minutes. For 7.
I wouldn't go down to 7 or 14 because they're split both. And they were getting,
How long would it take for us to finish the motion?
Maybe
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Okay.
I just need some quiet time.
They need to reach out to.
We need to officially end.
No, we can just go off the record here.
Yeah.
Okay, we We're going to finish the executive session, move back to our regular meeting time is 2:41 PM.